Okay. Mixed Minus Podcast, Matt McQueenie here with an old friend, Mike Descarfino from Mawa, growing up. Formerly, I forget what was that 07430?
07430.
The 07430.
The 07.
So we're going to have a real cool discussion here about all kinds of things. We're both fans of the Joe Rogan show, so we'll kind of hit on that. But before we get into that, I just want to thank everyone for their continued listening and reviewing of the podcasts. The podcast app on iPhones, which many of us have, you have it. Did you upgrade to iOS 8 yet?
No, I did not.
On iOS 8, the new upgrade, the podcast app is now forced on the phone, just like the notes and the mail and all that. So I think that's a really cool thing for podcasts in general, because really most of the uptake of it happens on iOS devices, because there's much more of kind of a push in the Apple sphere to get podcasts out there. Many people say, I guess, because the iPod, and they almost own the name, the podcasting name. But it's a real cool thing. How do you listen to podcasts?
I just go on my laptop.
So laptop. So you're not actually using an app.
I'm not. I will once I'm forced to.
Yeah, well, that's right. It's a great app. There's so many great ones out there. Whether you're talking about Pocket Casts,
right?
Downcast. They all have casts.
Well, like I said earlier, I'm going to get some recommendations from you of who to listen to other than Joe Rogan.
Yeah. Well, you can start with him, and they're 3 hours each of them.
Yeah.
So,
I love him, man.
And there's like 4 of them. Now, I'd like to know what this alpha brain things he pushes do. I think it allows you to do that.
I took a testosterone thing it's called T+.
Yeah.
And I took it just for energy, just because I started like jogging and doing all that stuff. And it has a little bit of alpha brain in it, the stuff that they use for alpha brain. And man, was I wired.
Really?
Oh yeah. Like I just felt attention, just like I was on like Ritalin or something.
You remember the ephedrine? Remember that?
Yes.
When we were younger?
Yes. Now it's been. Didn't one of the guys from the Orioles die on it or something?
Yeah, some crazy. It was because it was something about how you made it one way and it became speed.
Right.
And then you made it another way and it was ephedrine or hydroxycut.
Right.
I remember taking that one time because as a kid, you're like a teenager. You could buy it at the 7-Eleven, which is where we all went, and I was completely blown away. I took it at night. And now I'm like, you learn your body as you get older and you learn what you can do. I can't even drink coffee at night. I have to kind of cut off coffee at later than 5.
Did you feel any of that stuff actually helped you lose weight?
Well, because it made you like in our house, we have, when you have a house in the country like I do, they have exterminators come and they give this bait for mice.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does is it makes you, when the mouse gets it, because they love it, and it's perfectly enticing, much like hydroxycut was. And they take it, and it makes their heart beat really fast, and it makes them need water, but they can't satiate that water.
Right.
So I think in that regard, it worked, because you would take it. I remember the first time I took it was like 6 p.m. at night. And I was just like, yeah, let's see if this works. This is cool. And it's crazy that you could sell this to like kids.
Right.
And I have no idea of the ramifications of it. And so I took it. And all of a sudden I'm like, all right, I did like 1,000 push-ups and I couldn't do like 50 before.
Yeah.
1,000 push-ups. And I was just like wired. You had this great feeling. Must be what speed's like. I never took it. And then I'm reading books all night.
Mm-hmm.
So
next
I realized
you can't sleep.
You can't sleep. Of course you can't sleep. And then the next day I took it before I realized that like I shouldn't be taking this. And I went to the gym and I was on a elliptical for like 2 hours before I even noticed it. It just does that. It's dangerous stuff.
I remember when we were in high school, Brian Ross, speaking of Brian Ross, he would take some stuff. I don't know if it was like that but he would be wired all the time.
Yeah.
And like his personality times what he was taking. And I never got on that whole bandwagon of taking the stuff. I should have. I was a hefty kid back in high school. I think I was like 260 when I graduated high school. I was a fat bastard. And I never took any of that stuff. And I was lazy too. I never like would want to run. Now, ironically, I like jogging because I like pushing myself a little further. But back then, I mean, I probably could have used a boost like that, but probably good that I didn't.
Yeah. Well, you would have just like gone crazy. It's interesting when you get older that you get like into things like that.
Right.
All of a sudden, I care about reading more. I read all the time.
Right.
I care about different like, newspapers and arts and television shows and documentaries. And it's like, where was that when you're
It's compensating for the fact that we suck now and we're getting older.
Yeah. You get older and you care about running.
Yeah.
I mean, I never in my greatest thoughts would have thought I would try to do a marathon. And I completed 1 half marathon, which was cool. But you get into this thing and you realize that the natural endorphins go, and it's just like a perfect thing. I actually read something where Do you know what endorphin means? Endogenous morphine. So they created it because they saw what morphine does to people, and they're like, oh, there's a thing in the body that does the same thing naturally if you do certain things, endorphin. So you get those things rolling, you're great. Things like beer, like you work for, are great in moderation,
sure,
of course, especially with the heavier alcohol content.
Unlike an ecstasy, which would, I guess, depletes that in your body, right?
Or like it blows it up so much that you're like left with the next day, because our bodies are such compensatory machines that the next day you're kind of left with nothing because you used it up and then some. You're hugging people, loving people. I never did it, but you kind of get that feeling that that's what happens. So when you were a kid, what was your, when you're talking about you're more overweight, what was your kind of pastimes you were doing then instead of the, the running and the reading and
let's see, played a lot of video games. I was big into video games, movies, going out, just hanging out with friends at night. Sports. I was huge into sports.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
And I probably could have been a lot better at it if I took better care of myself or actually applied myself. I was the kind of guy that told the coach in 8th grade to go F himself and light up a cigarette because I thought I was cool. Backing at now, I would have slapped myself over the head.
I know, it's unbelievable. It's crazy when you look back when you're a kid and you think of the things that now that you're a little more mature, how embarrassed you are that you did things you do in interpersonal ways with other kids, how you would like make a kid's life hell.
Yeah.
Even kids who are bullied are at some point bullies too.
Oh, sure.
Whether it's to their younger sibling or something, but man, you just get that feeling where you go, and then sometimes you'll see people from your older times and they're like, oh man, you used to do this. And it's like, no, I don't think I did. And they're like, no, you didn't. And then you're sitting there going, wait, is their version true? And why aren't I remembering that? And was I that bad? It's a crazy thing when you think back, even when you're early 30s, how much living you've done.
Sure.
It's a crazy thing. So speaking of living, after high school and kind of college range, I remember, because of course we all follow each other on, it was probably MySpace then or Facebook. And I think I was in a band at the time where you were sort of around for whatever reason.
Yeah, we kind of reconnected through the Stillhaven.
But at the time you were living in Las Vegas.
Yes.
How come? Why'd you go out there for?
I was doing film with my best friend, Doug Werner. We still do it. We have to plug our company real quick, the Mainstream Insurgents. This was kind of before we got really serious, and we took a little break. Kind of a couple personal falling outs and stuff like that. And a good friend of mine, one of my best friends, Robert Fellner, is a professional poker player, and he had a place out in Vegas. He was like, listen, just come hang out with me, stay for a year or whatever, how long you want. And kind of just wanted to get away.
That's it, right? Yeah, you get that point in age.
Meet new people, and I met a lot of awesome people out there. And the thing about the desert is there's no such thing as alcoholism. It is totally accepted because it's available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Stores do not close. Bars do not close. You can walk into, I remember walking into an Albertsons, which is like an 8 a.m.P. over here. And I would walk in, it would be 5:30 in the morning. And guys like, oh, do you need alcohol? I can open up the cabinet for you. It's so accepted. I remember the one and only time I blacked out from drinking. Funny story, I actually fell out of a moving car. Don't remember what happened. I had road rash. I woke up and I thought it was a dream. And it was at my friend's house who we worked with. And I went a couple days later. I was like, dude, I blacked out. I fell out of a car. I got so wasted at your place. And he looks at me just as if you're looking at me now. He's like, okay, well, we got a party next week. I'll see you there. And he literally just walked away as if what I said to him meant nothing. And I realized when becoming friends with a lot of these people, it's part of the culture out there.
Yeah, it's because it's just live and let live.
Yeah.
I mean, people have the shirts, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but what if you stay in Vegas?
Yes. It's either you drink or you don't drink. You gamble or you don't gamble. And I tried to find a balance and in between, but it was tough.
And that was the point in time when it was as booming as it's ever boomed, right? I mean, there was no housing crisis yet. Everyone thought the house prices there would keep going up. So you're in a place where all the homes are filled. Life is great. I mean, could you sense that was coming or?
Yeah, I actually thought about trying to get some friends from the East Coast to come out. I mean, even now it's picking back up. I think the unemployment rate's only like 6% there now. I mean, it's really increased. It's really getting better. But back then you can get a 3-bedroom home in a decent area in Vegas for like $850 a month, $900. Now you could probably get one for $1,200 a month. Wow. Big deal. And now here I am in Brooklyn, and I'm spending $3,000, for a 2-bedroom, and it's just, now forget about it. Now the prices are going through the roof even more.
Well, I just heard, we like Joe Rogan. I just heard an episode that he was doing with Rory Albanese, who is, I guess he is or was the former head writer for The Daily Show.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just talking about the fact that the West has such a different way of life and way of thinking.
Totally.
And it kind of hit me that we just come to expect that where we are now on the East Coast, that's the default position. That's
totally.
You work really hard to pay off the rising prices that happen because so many people are working really hard, and all of like the kind of world of commerce comes to New York. We now have tech startups there. Like we got breweries. I mean, it really is taking on a life of its own beyond Wall Street. But why do we need that? We don't need that.
It's such a different pace. I actually lived in Studio City, California, which is in the Valley, LA area. I lived there for about 10 months prior to Vegas.
Really?
Yeah. So when I came back from there, I stayed in Jersey for a little bit, and then I went back out to Vegas and then came back. Completely different pace on the West Coast. It's an absolutely different animal. I didn't enjoy my time out there because it was a little too fake for me, a little too Hollywood, as they'd say. But
you've been in Vegas?
Vegas was different. Yeah. Vegas was like, yeah, we're West Coast, but we're kind of like, we're doing our own thing. Like that sort of that area, like that New Mexico, Nevada, Arizona area. They're a little different.
Yeah,
but they still have that same attitude. Yeah, you were living out there.
I moved to Arizona after college ended. After 9/11, I went to NYU, but then after 9/11, I was just like, we all had that kind of feeling. It's like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Even though you're not really safe anywhere.
Right.
And I do love how all these kind of fear mongers are trying to say that ISIS is on the
the only ISIS I like is the band.
I know, right? That is a good band. Good. And then they had the payment wallet too, which they had to change their name. All these people have to change their name. It's crazy. And then ISIS is changing their name all the time too. So it's it's a mess. But when I lived there, it really does hit you. You're almost sitting there and going, do you remember that movie with Albert Brooks, Defending Your Life?
No.
It was like this movie where when you die, everyone wears these white togas and then goes to this kind of purgatory. Not really. It's like you're there for 7 days, and then you go to court each day where there's someone arguing whether you should move on to the next level, and then the other side saying,
is it something like every part of your life where you did something wrong? Or
yeah, and it was like they send you back. They send you back if you didn't warrant going to the next level. And so his whole life, and then on like a big screen, they're showing you your life.
Yeah.
And the decisions you made. And then you have to like defend what you were really thinking in the moment to get past it. And then people are really going after you. And then he meets Meryl Streep in there. Of course, she's moving on.
Right, of course.
And he falls in love with her. And his ultimate thing that they let him move on is because she's going towards the next one in a train. And then his train was going towards the other. And he actually like overcame all his fears to bust through there and get it. So they let him in. But anyway, that reminds me of what Arizona was like. It was sort of like everything you do there doesn't make that much of an import on the world.
What part? Where are you in?
I was in Phoenix. I was at Paradise Valley area. But it's sort of like everything exists within that little mountain range. And, Vegas has that a little too. Yeah. A lot of people come there, as do a lot of people go to Arizona too, in the Phoenix area for vacationing. But when you live there, everything you do there is self-contained. Like there's not a lot of stuff coming out to the greater world like you could do in California, or you could do in New York or other places. Like there's a lot of inward looking out or outward looking in. There people just live their lives, have their kids. It's a beautiful place, and you move on. And a part of me was like, boy, this is great. I understand. I worked at a burrito place at night. Would work like 15 hours a week, and we were living in a nice ranch house with a pool, 3 guys, my cousin and another guy. And I think we were each paying $450 each.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And we'd get up in the morning. We'd go to like lift or eat. Then we go play golf.
But it's good though to get away from that.
It is nice
grind.
To feel it. But I knew I was only doing it like 4 months. And then there's certain things. One, I was like, this is very selfish in my mind because I have I'm the oldest of 4. I have younger siblings back home. And I'm not doing something that's changing the world. I'm just like living nice. I'm living nicely. And you do have that little bug from where we come from where it's like you want to do bigger and better things. Right. Even if you're reaching for it and you try and you don't get there, at least you tried and you reach some kind of level where people could see you were trying to do bigger things. And there you would have a nice, quiet, great life, but you weren't going to be making like a wider like impact on the outside world.
I got homesick after a while, but it wasn't like, oh, I miss home. It was like what you were saying, like I got to go back. There's something else I should be doing.
Yeah. Well, and then the weird thing was, I don't know if you got this, but when I came back home, it was like nothing was changed. Even though where we grow up is crazy intense, but there's a quietness to it. And there's also a feeling of, okay, I plugged right back into the matrix. Life's just going on. I mean, you could see it. I commute to work every day. I mean, I work in Newark, so I get to go by car, but life just goes. Life keeps moving on, and you just go to your job, you come home, you know, you raise a family eventually. And it's like those moments, you don't get those much where you could just say, I'm moving to Vegas for a little bit. I'm moving to California.
Right.
I'm moving to Arizona, because you don't want to regret it. And I think that's an important piece of it, is being able to go out there and not feel like you're leaving anything out there, that in your mind, you're not sitting there going, man, I wish I tried to do that, you know? And it's important, because I think I can live now, and I'm completely happy with what I'm doing, but I can live now knowing that I did that. And you know, when you're going to do it, you think of all the pluses and how great it's going to be. And boy, there doesn't seem to be any downsides. And there always are downsides. There's never all good or all bad.
I feel like when, I don't know, how old were you when you were out in Arizona?
21, 22.
I was in the same age in that when I was out in the West. I felt like when you're 21, you feel like you know it all. And then when you're 26, you're like, man, I don't know shit.
Yeah.
So now I'm at that stage in my life where it's like, I just turned 32 in July, and it's like, you know what? Good. I'm glad I experienced it. I'm glad I don't have any regret. Like, I didn't do that. I went for it. Might not have worked out, but I did it anyway. When I was living in LA, I went with a former partner of mine for film. And, you know, we made a couple of short films. We had premiere. We did a whole thing. I flew my family out. Didn't work out. I got my ass kicked out there, but it was good because I had that experience. Yeah. And I came back to New York, to Jersey, and it was like, yeah, all right, I'm a little mentally stronger. Defeated, but stronger.
Yeah. Well, you never get to, you have to try.
Yeah.
Because even if you didn't succeed, whatever that means, you still assimilated the experience, and you still feel happy for having done it.
Yeah.
And it still fills a hole that you'll never feel was left.
You'll learn, okay, how could I do it better? What did I do wrong? What did I do right? But having this, you know, saying to yourself, damn, I wish I did this, or I wish I did that. Well, you know what? I saw it. I went for it. Might not have worked, but I still did it.
Well, you realize people too, I think, in places like Los Angeles, places like Las Vegas, they're smooth operators. They never get too deep into things. The people who are successful, they always stay above the fray somehow. And I think there's just a certain personality.
That's an older generation, though. I think the generation now, it's a little more cutthroat, I would say. Everybody has an idea, has something that they want to contribute or show, like, oh, I could do this or I could do that. But like you were saying, I think that's a little like maybe our parents' generation, where they knew how to do it. They knew they had that sort of salesman mentality where they can, like you said, stay above the fray. Now everybody's just like, no, I have an idea. Now with how technology and the internet has changed in the last 20 years.
And the costs aren't crazy.
Unbelievable.
Costs to entry are like nothing.
I mean, if we wanted to shoot a film, we can literally, all right, here's a couple $1,000s now with all the post-production. And we can literally shoot something that 20, 30 years ago, it would cost an arm and a leg to do, even on a small scale.
You can get your ideas to market so easily.
So easy.
It's just getting the uptake on it.
Like, do you watch the IFC channel at all? Like the Portlandian and all that stuff? But just like even the shows that are on that channel, people are just doing webisodes and stuff like that on YouTube. And it's like, oh, and then the next big thing.
And a lot of them own the rights to it too. Yes. So if it really takes off, you might have to put a little capital in for marketing and
but
for good equipment.
That's minute compared to what it used to be.
You know, I mean, I've talked about it before, but all these startups, the majority of them today, they don't have to buy server capacity anymore. They rent it from Amazon. And Amazon makes a killing because they're renting out their excess server space, which they've kept for the peak demand times of the year. And they rent it out to companies, and it became its own actual business. They actually sent a guy to South Africa to be away from the mix. And this guy, and I think a handful of other people, created Amazon Web Services. Instagram was on it. Netflix was on it.
Are they the only one that's really doing that, or capitalizing? Is there other?
Google's doing it now. Okay. Apple's trying to do it with iCloud.
But Amazon was the first.
Amazon was the first, and they were the cheapest. And Amazon always undercuts price. Always.
God, imagine getting into that company on ground level.
Oh, man. Well, I read that. There was a great book called The Everything Store, Jeff Bezos and the Age of Amazon. Unbelievable book, because people don't realize Jeff Bezos is sort of like Steve Jobs in that he's insane. I mean, his pursuit of excellence leaves all people in the dust.
Some those guys just got it, you know?
Yeah. And I don't have that in me. And I don't know that they're happy either. I think there's just something in them that's like an unmet need.
Like that constant chase for like, all right, it's got to.
And they're both adopted.
Wow.
Too, which is interesting. But it's like this, I have to keep doing better. I can't let anybody overcome me. And we look at it and go, oh, they're rich. They're living in, one's living in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
One was living in Silicon Valley
mm-hmm.
in beautiful weather. But their drive every day to wake up, they're not happy.
Right.
They're just trying to scratch something that's just annoying them every day. And it gives us these products which reach us with perfection in a lot of ways. And it's scary that sometimes that's the price you have to pay. And you often go, does that mean that I'm a more realized person? Or do I need some of that? I think you always need a little of that. You always need a little of that drive.
I think you kind of lose who you are, though, if you're that person.
You do. And isn't it funny, though, when you move up in life and jobs, when you start out, you're so naive, which is a good thing, too. It's good to be naive because you're providing a viewpoint that is different than the hardened people. So they could pull from it. If the right people are utilizing you, they can pull from it. But it also can get beat down. And you find yourself, like you said, early 20s, now late or mid 30s or early 30s now, aging us already. But you find yourself start to harden. And it's hard to keep that youthful naivety because life just kind of carries it through, and sort of how you move forward and keep what was that, that important.
Do you feel that you've lost any passions? Maybe things that brought you enjoyment, as a kid growing up or in the mid-20s. Now you're just like, yeah, I'm not really into that so much. Yeah, really.
Yeah,
because you seem like you're really, really knowledgeable into sports, and I feel like we can have a 10-hour conversation on it. So I wouldn't have guessed that, but really,
well, I could. It's almost like I got a doctorate in sports because it was from the time I was 18, because Jason Kidd came to the Nets and changed my entire thinking on how basketball is played. And I got to see him in his prime with the team that I watched and loved even before he came, and they stunk. Stephon Marbury being their main guy.
Yeah.
And I was sad when they traded for him.
They had their glory with a 3-year run where they kept making the finals.
Yeah, they got to the finals twice. They almost got to a game 7 in the second year against Spurs when the Spurs were in the middle of they were as good as they would ever be right then, really. But I read it, I lived it. It was all I read every day. It was as if I was going to college in sports. I read it before anything I read at NYU. Every morning, I'd read the New York Times sports section, New York Post, New York Daily News, and we have in our area the best sports sections in the country. I mean, now a lot of it's been decoupled into all of these online properties, Bleacher Sports, ESPN, all that kind of stuff. But those were the best. When you read that about your team and you followed the beat, it actually created a job for me because by studying it, I learned how to be a beat writer without having to be one. Then I was learning tech at the same time, but I got to watch. I don't know if you ever read Bill Simmons' book, The Book of Basketball.
No.
Well, he talks about the same thing with Larry Bird being his protagonist. And Larry Bird made him watch the game differently and appreciate the game differently. And it was like being a part of a graduate course seminar where someone's just the greatest artist of unselfish basketball. And it was a frame of reference that you can never get back. I mean, it's just an amazing thing. And so I got to see that. And over time, I got to work there. And that I feel like 1 year working in sports ages your sports love 8 years or 10 years.
Really?
Because you see things that aren't reported. You thought that when you were reading Page Six or you were reading Peter Vesey in the Post telling you what the behind the scenes thing was, you thought that was it. It's not it. I mean, the behind the scenes stuff was so egregious sometimes. And you realize no one can even write that stuff.
Like give an example.
I don't know if I can, but things like players with women and seeing trying to forcibly take a woman and like idols in front of you. And
I guess that's when you realize that, man, these people are just as flawed and broken as the average day person,
if not more.
Yeah.
Because they're raised in many ways in either not great circumstances,
sure,
or not great circumstances plus the AAU world, where from the time they're like an early teenager and someone identifies that this is going to be a great player, they're provided a bubble. Nothing can touch them, and they almost always stay that 14-year-old kid, like we talked about, aging and growing up and learning from failure. Their failure is losing a basketball game.
Right.
It's not losing something real. And they've been provided this bubble.
The burden of responsibility is so much less for, and that's why they speed. That's why they get arrested. It's like, all right, whatever. I'll just get bailed out and beat the charge or whatever.
Well, Allen Iverson was the worst at that, and he's lost all his money.
Yeah. Didn't he make like $150 million at one point?
I think so. He might have made upwards of $200 million.
It's a shame.
And he's just really got nothing.
One of the best basketball players of our generation. That guy has to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and he's not even 40. I mean, it's like, it's crazy, but he was like that. On the court, you revere him because you're just like, oh man, David and Goliath. This guy's just slaying everybody.
Yeah.
And preening over them when he slays the bigger guys.
Pure score. One of the pure scores. Probably the pure score either, that I've witnessed.
Oh, he was,
we were a little too young to really see the greatness of Bird and Magic. And
we saw Michael, though.
We did see Michael. Thank God. Even though I still consider him part of that, mostly of that generation. We saw I think we were fortunate enough to see the best generation of basketball.
Yeah.
Right at the tail end of the Bird Magic, and then, the Michael Jordans and, the rivalries with Patrick Ewing and all that stuff. And we were privy to the best centers ever. Ewing, O'Neal, Robinson. Those guys were the best of the best.
That's true. And
the best power forwards. We saw the game
Duncan.
when it was still physical. Now it's I can't watch the NBA anymore. I only watch it come playoffs.
It's all swing players. It's like these
it's a different
threes game. Just going. I mean, LeBron is still unbelievable. And I can't wait to see.
How do you think he'd fare 80, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s with guys that would purposely bang him up?
I think he's one of the guys who I think he would be timeless, because the 80s or the 90s never would have seen an athlete like that.
Mm-hmm.
His ability to be the size of a tight end
and move,
and to play like a point guard, and to have the best of all these different players. And he has a will as well. That's pretty great that he has honed through learning, because it was cool to see somebody with that much talent be humbled, have terrible moments. Talk about a guy who was cosseted, who was just kept away from the world. And he's unreal though. And I think he's gotten some humanity back, and he compared going to Miami like going to college. And now he's come home. He got to do whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
And now all that's going to be forgotten about the decision. And they can just say it was a learning thing. He was young. He made a mistake.
Well, I'm glad he won. Whatever. I think a guy like that has to have a couple of rings on his fingers,
Oh, yeah. Everybody won in that situation.
Yeah.
He can go home with 2. And I have a good feeling he's going to win. I also think we're going to see Kevin Love. A lot of people have not seen him play. I wasn't sitting there, as I said, with a lot of my lost passion for the game. I used to watch the NBA ticket, or not the league pass. I used to watch that all the time, and I would love watching the obscure games, because it was like you got to hear the announcers on teams you'd never heard, and you got to really know the ins and outs of how certain players are doing, especially when the trade deadline came.
Yeah.
Most people would go, why are they trading for that guy? And you go, well, I was watching, Minnesota play Sacramento, and I saw the way that guy can play.
Yeah.
But Kevin Love, I think, is going to be so tremendous in this situation.
I think he's a beast. In his own right, he could really change a game.
His IQ, LeBron will have never played with such a smart player. And
right.
The way that they're going to run an offense together, and the way that Kevin Love is like an instant fast break. People say he throws one of the best outlet passes in the history of the game.
Guy's got a cannon for an eye. You ever said, was that sports science thing he did?
Oh yeah.
With hitting that ridiculous 3-pointer or longest shot. Yeah. The guy, I could see that.
Yeah. So I can't wait to watch that.
That's going to be exciting. And they still have Kyrie Irving, right?
They do. Kyrie Irving, and they've gotten a bunch of guys who were from the Miami team. That's the sign of an all-time great, that he can get players. Not the hard part wasn't getting players to come play with Miami, but to get them to leave Miami to come to Cleveland.
Yeah.
I even saw a guy I used to work with, or work alongside when I was at the Nets. This guy named Dave McManaman. I always mess up the N or the M. Really nice guy. He's from Philadelphia. He went to Syracuse, and he worked for the NBA when I was there. So the NBA used to be based in, or the NBA offices used to be based in Secaucus, and that's where they would always have the NBA draft lottery. And so when you're based there, those guys always will go to the Nets games or the Knicks games, and that they use that as their point of entry to the rest of the league. They don't send them around the league because you already got two NBA destinations right around your offices. So if you have a story about a player, wait till they're in town and then write it or cover those teams. So he, after he left the NBA, went to LA to work for ESPN in LA, because ESPN did that thing where they broke off sites like ESPN New York, ESPN Dallas, ESPN LA. And so he went out there, and he'd been there for maybe 6 years at this point. I saw just now he's going to ESPN Cleveland.
Oh my God.
Like LeBron legitimately, and that's what I thought was so cool about this, he's legitimately reinvigorating.
But what if he's out of there 2 years? I know he signed the 2-year deal with the intention of probably spending the rest of his career there. But what if he's like, you know what? It ain't going to happen the way I thought it did. I'm out of here.
Yeah, I don't think he will, because I thought the really neat thing would be LeBron could truly show his genius as a player if he signed a 1-year deal with a different team every year. And then imagine how cool it lights up the NBA in that city.
Yeah.
Every year. And then
you're going to have a lot of different colored LeBron jerseys.
Yeah. And then, like I said, because he's bigger than the game right now. I mean, he's bigger than any one team, any one jersey. That's why I loved when Pat Riley was he aged himself out when he thought there was any pride to staying with the Miami Heat.
Yeah.
Like the same guy who left the Knicks in a lurch to go to Miami.
Didn't he leave LA in a lurch too?
Yeah, he left a lot of places. He fires really hot. But and what a career for that guy, by the way.
7 rings as a coach, or 6 rings as a coach?
3 with the Heat.
3 with the Heat, 3 with the Lakers, or 4 with the Lakers.
4 with the Lakers. Yeah, I think he's got
7.
The amazing thing with him, though, I had on this show Jeff Pearlman. Do you know him? He's a pretty well-known kind of sports writer. He used to write for Sports Illustrated, and now he's like this New York Times best-selling book writer. So he'll spend a couple of years writing about the '86 Mets. He wrote about the '90s Dallas Cowboys, and he just finished his most recent book. Not just finished; it was last year, on the Showtime Lakers.
Okay.
And like you probably felt going to LA, there's just something magical about LA. Yeah. It's like the grass is always greener place.
You go there looking for greener pastures.
Yeah. And it's like, you always see LA. It's always in magazines. The weather's always beautiful. It's always better than where you are.
It's everybody's ideal, vision of perfection.
Shangri-La.
Yeah.
Right. And so he wrote this book about then, and I was dying to read this book. And then he agreed to come on the show, and I did a podcast with him. And like he was on, he'd be on like ESPN and Keith Olbermann, all this stuff. And he gave an hour. Unbelievable guy. But in his book, you learn a lot about Pat Riley. And one of the most amazing things was Pat Riley was a down on his luck ex-player. And he was the color guy for Chick Hearn on the Lakers radio network or television network. And this was a time when the NBA had like one head coach and one assistant coach, which is crazy when you think about that, with how many there are now. There's like a defensive specialist, an offensive coordinator, quality control. That's in NFL. NFL is even worse, but there's just so many now. And so he was just the radio announcer, 36 years old, maybe. Not much left. He was just sort of going to do this. Then the head coach of the Lakers, his name was, can't think of it right now, but he was a famous Jack McKenna, I think it was. So he was the coach, and he brought Paul Westhead to be his assistant coach. These are 2 guys who had just a couple of years ago been college head coaches in the Philadelphia area at like Lehigh and St. Joe's. And now they're running the Lakers. And this guy had gone to, he had come up with Dr. Jack Ramsey, who was that guy we always saw over the years. He was a great coach. And then he was Dr. Jack's assistant coach at Portland. So he was really in demand then, because the Portland dynasty there with a great team, great offense. And so he created Showtime. He came to LA to run Showtime. And like 20 games into his first season, he was headed to go play tennis with Paul Westhead after they were like 13-4 or something. Great start. He's driving his bike. He hits like a pothole, goes over the bike, just nails his head. He's totally out on the ground. He doesn't even know who he is. Wow. Someone brings him to the hospital. Imagine the head coach and like no one knows, and he doesn't know who he is.
Wow.
Paul Westhead took the team over because, Jack was like totally out. Like he was just knocked out, and it took him a while to get back to it. Paul Westhead takes that team, takes the Showtime that McKenna started, leads them to win a championship in Philadelphia 1 year after he had just been coaching Lehigh in Philadelphia. And then he took Pat Riley, who had an office right across the hall from him, from Paul Westhead. He goes, I need an assistant coach. Mm-hmm. Pat, Chick Hearn let him go. That's how big Chick Hearn was. Chick Hearn was like part of the decision-making entity of the Lakers. Like he actually helped make decisions.
Wow.
And he was an announcer. That's how powerful he was. He let Pat Riley be an assistant.
Wow.
Paul Westhead then grew very overbearing on the players, especially Magic Johnson. Mm-hmm. And the famous thing where Magic Johnson basically wasn't going to play for him anymore.
Right.
Pat had been doing, like every assistant coach always happens, the players end up liking the assistant coach because he's not being mean to them. He's the good cop. Pat takes over, and the rest is history.
Was Pat Riley always known to have a good basketball mind? Or was he just kind of like, hey, you're in the right place at the right time?
It was sort of that, and then he
because he has that image with the slick back hair, the $1,000 suit.
I mean, he created what the McKenna started, and McKenna never. I hope I'm saying the right name. I think it was McKenna, but he became like the head coach of Indiana then, and he never got back that time. But he would have. You see the way lives change. I mean, and let's be honest, his life changed because he was just going to be okay with being the
assistant.
Yeah, he was just going to be an assistant coach in the NBA. And by the way, when he was the head coach of St. Joe's, he was totally fine being the head coach of St. Joe's for the rest of his life. But a new priest came in and just like cleaned house. Wow. And so he was out of a job. And it was that then he talked to a friend, Hubie Brown, and they got a job with Milwaukee and then moved over to Dr.
Hubie Brown with the one with the weird ties all the time?
Yeah, he was the guy. He's the guy who does the he coached in the earlier 2000s, mid 2000s of Memphis. He came back.
Yeah.
And he's the guy who does all the TNT.
Yep. And he used to do the VHS NBA stuff, right? Like the slam dunks and 3-pointers.
Yeah, no, he's Jack McKinney.
That's Jack McKinney.
Jack McKinney. Fascinating book, though. I mean,
wow,
fascinating book.
So McKinney won a ring. Did he do anything after? Did he coach after? Or?
Just that Indiana, and then he was out, and his life was, and he still was forgetful. I mean, going to play tennis on an off day,
crazy,
because someone had taken his car or something like that. I mean, there's a happenstance to life. And that's why when you talk about, you go to a place like Vegas, you go to a place like LA, you go here, you never know what's going to start up. And even if the thing that you planned didn't start up, you still learned so much from it.
Well, sometimes it's good to hit the lottery.
Yeah, but it's unreal. And you just think of these guys like looking to play tennis. They had just been living in Philadelphia.
That's like wild.
Portland. So when you're in, so you were in LA for 10 months.
Just shy than a year.
You went there to stay though, right?
Yeah, I went there there was no long-term goal. It was kind of just like, we're going to go make some films and be the next big thing. You know, it's like every guy who starts writing a novel, I'm going to be the next Jack Kerouac. And the next thing you know, they're stuck on chapter 6 for the rest of their life.
Where did the filmmaking stuff come from?
Just a passion from really, from loving film as a kid. And then Doug, who's my partner, he's a brilliant mind, an excellent writer, brilliant filmmaker, and kind of just like, damn, this could be done. We can write a script. We can make our own films, our own projects, and do what we want to do. And I kind of like got the itch, and from him, and learned a lot from him. Learned a lot from my ex-partner. So kind of less like teaching yourself as you go.
Yeah.
But I've always had an appreciation for cinematography, for directing, for acting, and just went with it. And I still fortunately have that passion. And that's why I kind of got into homebrewing back in 2006, kind of as something to break up the monotony of film, and just like, kind of like, oh, we're going nowhere with this, or it's no longer fun because it's actually hard work.
Yeah. It's very hard. And then you realize too, you make the thing.
Yes.
And then when it doesn't launch, kind of commensurate with the effort you put into it.
Yeah.
You then think, okay, I got to go and create the next one to hope that one catches.
And we were doing everything out of pocket. We still kind of do that, where it's out of pocket, but we're in control of it. Nobody can tell us what to do and what not to do. But with that goal of letting the right person see it.
Right.
So not necessarily trying to be the next big thing, but just have somebody, oh, this is really good. And then launch a career from that.
Did you finish the thing you went to LA to do?
Yes.
In those 10 months?
Yes. Yes and no. The one project we had were some personal issues for one film, which didn't end up being premiered and screened, which ironically was this filmmaker's best movie that he did. So I'm surprised he didn't run with it, but there were some issues going on there. But yeah, we did technically accomplish it. Yeah. It just didn't pan out. And again, luckily, I'm glad it didn't, because I probably would have shot myself in LA at some point. It got really depressing.
Where were you living?
Studio City.
And where is that in?
That's right by Van Nuys, Sherman Oaks.
And how'd you end up there? Like that location specifically in LA?
Remember Susan Benjamin?
Yeah.
I was her roommate.
Really?
Yeah, she had a place out there, and her ex-boyfriend from a while ago, I think, split up, and he moved out, and she had a little side room, and I was crashed there, and my partner ended up living in the same building.
Wow.
With his brother, and kind of worked out. It's funny how things fall into place.
Well, yeah, and you go where like others of your tribe are.
Yes.
And if that tribe is Mawa, or that tribe can be anything.
It just worked out. She's like, hey, I know you want to come out to LA. I need a roommate, and it just worked out.
So what was like day one like there?
Day
you feel
one,
like you figured it all out, and you're like, this is it.
No, when I got there, I was like, I need a job.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, day one was kind of like, all right, now what do we do? Let's conquer the world.
And did you have like how did you guys write? Like, did you have the thing written already by the time you got there?
Yeah, it was. We were actually working on it in Jersey prior to going out there. We went out there for a couple of weeks prior to me moving out, to us moving out. We shot the majority of the film already, and then we worked on a second project solely out in LA.
How'd you know how to do this stuff? Like, how'd you know? Did you
taught myself? Yeah. I learned, and I'm still learning. Especially now that I've been involved with beer for so long, I'm kind of like going back and, reapplying myself. But it's a lot easier now to teach yourself and learn with all the programs that are out there. But back then, a buddy of mine went to NYU for filmmaking, so he kind of taught me the basics of cinematography and basics of directing, stuff like that, writing. I remember the first couple of scripts I wrote, they were so trite. I mean, I'm talking incredibly trite. Like, I would be embarrassed if anybody read it, but it's fine. It's like, it's a great starting point. Yeah.
You got to do it, because you're only going to get better.
And it's like, by starting then I picked up a book and I was like, oh, this is how you are supposed to write dialogue. And it was pretty cool, but kind of threw myself into the wolves.
Was that overwhelming to read a book on script writing and then to write a script?
No, it's actually, thank God I read it, because I was like, oh wow, this is amazing. It was such an eye opener. And it was a very short, probably 100 pages.
Well, do you realize a lot of people probably do the same thing?
Oh yeah,
when you're
absolutely.
I've
read
template
early drafts of people's scripts and was like, damn, we didn't know shit.
Did you interface with like anybody we'd know in terms of celebrity at that time? Like, how did you guys put together a crew?
Yeah, my ex-partner, his family is with an actor named God, I want to see if his name's right, but he was on The West Wing. DeLay Hill, I think his name is. I might have his first name wrong, but he was the assistant to Charlie Sheen, Martin.
DeLay Hill.
Yeah, DeLay Hill. He's from the Oranges originally.
Really?
He moved out there, and he's got some decent roles. He's got a show, I think, on USA where he's a main star. He was kind of our in to the inner circle, and then I remember meeting Dwayne Wade's wife now.
Oh, Gabrielle
Union. I met her years ago when she was married to a former running back for Michigan. I forgot his name. He played for the Raiders for a little bit and retired. I think Chris Howard, I think his name was. So that was like our in. But they were, it wasn't like, oh, I hung out with them all the time, but they were very nice.
Yeah.
And just kind of like guided us into the right direction. Kind of like, well, we can't get you in. You're not going to come in here and just like stroll in, and like we had to work hard to get in.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I noticed with a lot of celebrities or quasi celebrities, is kind of like, yeah, well, we had to work hard to get in here, so we're not gonna like just let you stroll in.
Yeah.
But we'll put you in touch with the right people, and they did that. They went out of their way as much as they could or were willing to. But yeah, the door didn't fully open.
No.
But hey, it was a great opportunity. I mean, they kind of gave us the floor to run with.
So you did like meetings with people?
Yeah, we met with a couple of big producers, a couple of agencies. I think CAA we met with.
What's that like?
Creative artists. It was a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
But they could smell, how green you are. They smelt it. They just like, listen, we deal with this stuff all the time.
Oh, they were nice about it.
Yeah, but they were professionally told us, no, now's not the time to bring this script on, but keep it up, make some revisions, and send it back to us 6 months later.
What was the story about? Are you able to even say?
I think the script that we submitted was called Beauty, and it was about a woman who there's these murders happening around this woman, and it's very in the theme of Hitchcock.
Okay.
So it was a suspense story. Turns out that she was really the one committing the killings, and she was leading on this private detective who was an ex-cop, and he figured it out at the end, and she got away. Blah blah blah. Now that I look back at it, but it was a good script at the time.
Yeah,
but probably definitely needed some reformatting. Is
it exhausting when you look at it and go, when you're in New Jersey and you think about going to California, you think you're of a smaller percentage of people here who are going out there, but then when you get there, everybody there is you, right?
Everybody there was from the East Coast. I felt like the people that I met that were actually from California, that was the real California. That was the true laid back, just did everything at their own pace, didn't have a worry in the world. I didn't meet too many of those people, unfortunately, because everybody was from New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, Jersey. They were all from the East Coast.
And what was the thing that just you knew that it wasn't where you wanted to stay? I mean, to leave like just in under a year.
When we were doing some projects and everybody's on your coattails. Oh, what coattails? Oh, what do you got? I'd love to work with you. I'd love to work with you. I'd love to work with you. And then when the one thing didn't pan out the way we envisioned, all your friends are not there anymore.
It's messed up.
It's the nature of the beast.
It's almost like you're a dealer.
Yeah, that's how it is.
And it's like, oh, you're not getting that connect anymore?
So it's like, wait a minute. I thought we were cool, man. And it's like, no, you're not the hot guy, right? You're not the new up and coming underground guy. So we're going to go to the next person. They're like piranhas that smell blood.
Now, what gave them did they know that what you were doing was something that could work out, or was it that you were getting the right connects into meetings?
They felt like, oh, here's the new guy in the block that has the potential to possibly be recognized. So they would just write on it. And then when it didn't pan out for us, all right, well, we're gonna go to the next guy that we find. I mean, they're like vultures out there
because it's all they got. Too.
So many actors. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Everybody and their mother is an actor.
Yeah. Well, you look at it and you say to yourself, man, that's the life. It's the life for the people who make it.
Mm-hmm. And it's dog eat dog, and they're all scratching and clawing and trying to get up there.
Even those who make it, though, they're now fighting to keep the people who are trying to make it off their back. Like you never feel like you made it. I mean, even an actor, sure, someone like an Aniston or a Carey when he was making 10, 15, 20 million dollars a film, it's like an athlete sort of.
Mm-hmm.
You're not thinking about the contract right now. You're thinking about, how do I stay alive in this thing?
Oh yeah.
Everybody is. There's no layers of protection and safety in it. It's purely you stripped down naked in front of everything.
Oh no, you're exposed.
Completely. But it's a good feeling too. I mean, it probably makes whatever you do.
I'm very, like I said before, I'm very fortunate I had that experience. But now I know the ins and outs of LA, and it's just like, yeah, no, it's not a beast I want to tackle anymore.
Do you ever go and visit?
No.
It's so funny.
Nope. I like California. I used to drive up to like Malibu and Canyon Country. Beautiful, just a beautiful area. Northern California is great. A lot of awesome breweries. I got some friends who own some breweries out there. I want to go visit them. But LA in general, I just don't like it. It's not my town. It's not my town. It's all about, it's people, places, and things. It's about who you are, what you got, what could you offer.
Well, and the industry is really diversifying more.
Now it is. I think now if I went out now, knowing what I know, obviously it'd be a lot different, especially now with what we have available. That wasn't that wasn't really available then as it is now. So anybody can just do a quick webisode and get picked up by IFC
from anywhere.
Can't do it now. I mean, you couldn't do it back then. If you did, it was just few and far between. But it's crazy how much 10 years it changes. It's unreal.
Well, it's really fun to think about the fact, even starting something like a podcast, that you don't need a network anymore.
No, you did. You absolutely did. Now you don't. No,
you create.
And that's the thing that my partner Doug and I were so big on, was finding a network of actual starving artists in our area that were passionate about making film. And a lot of those guys started dropping like flies
because they got to fill their Tell me.
Yeah, but they almost found different callings, and which I do respect. Yeah. You know, if you found a different calling in life, God bless you, go for it. But a lot of guys weren't that good at it, and we strive to get better every time. And I think for as small of an outfit we can do some pretty incredible things with next to no money.
So how did you guys write? How did you guys write? Like, was one guy the guy walking around with the ideas, the other one's writing it all down?
No, for the most part, Doug does a lot of the writing. I finished a short film called Afternoon Delight, about 8 minutes long, which I wrote and directed. So it's kind of like my project back into doing it, on a larger basis than I was for the past couple of years. It was about a writer who, and not even a writer, it's a young professional who kind of goes insane in his house. Huh. He thinks somebody might be trying to break in. There is somebody that was trying to like get directions from him. So is the person really breaking in? Is the guy going nuts? One of those old Hitchcock couldn't want to be type films. So it's cool, and it's a very quick pace for 8 minutes. So that was like, but again, it's something you can shoot in a weekend, and we shot it as if it were film. The cinematography, Doug did the cinematography. It's gorgeous. Probably the best work he's ever done in terms of lighting a film, and that's not his specialty. He's a director. But I mean, we put 100% into everything. So, you get out of it what you put in.
Are 8-minute films? Is that like the kind of average what you do for a short film?
No, generally we did a short film called The Wire, and it was about 30 minutes long.
Okay.
But yeah, you could do a 10-minute short. You can actually submit those to festivals.
Right.
They have, I think it's like 5 to 10-minute submissions, and then you can go higher. I think a short film is technically up to 50 minutes or 45 minutes. And then it becomes a feature, I think, after 60 minutes.
So do you do a short film for its own merit, or is a short film sort of the startup idea that a network picks up to have you do a
I would recommend filmmaking in general. Don't do a feature if you haven't done a couple of shorts. And doing a feature, you need some money behind it. But yeah, we've actually yet to do a feature, and we're actually working on a project now. Doug's doing the storyboarding for a project, which would be our first feature, but we're probably a little bit of ways away from that.
So that's a long process.
Yes.
I mean, is it like a year of because
you
both have, jobs? Like, does he have a job?
Yeah,
that we both do it on the side.
We both work. Yeah, we both work 9 to 5s, and but eventually we would hope to make this our full-time job.
Yeah. Although it seems like you like what you're doing now.
I do, and I'm content with doing both. I would, eventually, depending on what project we're in, I would have to devote more time to the company. To the film company, and then when things ease up, I can go back a little more with beer. But no, I think I can give. I would like to give 100% to each.
Yeah,
it's tough, but
it's like
right now it's manageable. Thank God.
It's really hard right now too, because we're going from a world where it was like the 9 to 5 was it, and now I think our generation you don't like that. It's not dynamic enough. You want to be doing a bunch of things and be all over the place doing things. And 2, I don't know if the work world can handle this anymore, because a lot of work in offices in the 9 to 5, a lot of wasted time.
Yes.
And you could totally be out better using your time. And it's not like you're trying to say to the boss, well, no, I still want to get paid and do this, but it's sort of unnecessary. And John Maynard Keynes, the famous economist from the early 20th century, he thought his grandchildren would be working 15-hour work weeks. And that's how he thought productivity would work out, and there would be so much efficiencies, and then we'd be able to have other pursuits, because it's sort of is life sapping in a lot of ways. These kind of long-term jobs in the creative society is very much something where you really go idea to idea, and you're always inspired, and you're always doing that kind of stuff. And I was just reading something today about the way technology, how in past technological revolutions, sure, it knocked out old incumbents who, horses stopped being as important when a car came.
Yeah.
But that this generation right now, the digital revolution, is knocking out the past things, but it's not actually replacing it yet with new things. And so you're leaving a society where there's a lot of people who could be kind of without a job, and no real recourse to do much unless we start training them up.
Right.
And I saw it might have been Sweden that's thinking about this, but that the government has a baseline kind of life fund that they pay people per year so that you can go and do pursuits you want to do. So they don't give you enough where you could like fully live off of it, but it was something like $32,000 a year, which isn't small, but it's enough.
It's enough you could technically live if you're a single guy, you could live off that.
And then you do your own pursuits,
right,
and top it up, and then maybe succeed in a way that takes it to the next level.
Imagine doing that here in America. That would be nice. It
would be unbelievable. Yeah. And a lot of and I'm, I don't like to get into the politics of it, but I think a lot of the things I liked about any kind of healthcare that's not just given to us by big business is that if you have healthcare, and we didn't get one where the government pays for it, obviously, we have exchanges, which are still businesses. But if you have healthcare that's given by the government, for good or bad, let's just say it's the best you can get. It opens you up to do what you want to do, because when your job gives you your health insurance, you have much more of a pull to stay in that job because you don't want to be without health insurance. But if you had health insurance covered, and maybe you had this $32,000 in a year, all of a sudden, I think there's a lot more happy people doing things that are furthering the world in a better way, going after creative pursuits. Maybe you can make money off of doing a podcast. Maybe you could make money off of doing your films, doing some beer stuff on top of it, and then having some time to spare to read and to watch things, to be further inspired to help those pursuits. But what you're left with is sort of we're sort of in the middle of something. I think we're the past and the future, and we're right there. We're waiting, whether it's a cliff or whether it's a stairway to get to the next phase. Right. Because more people, I think, are like us than are like the 9-to-5 people. I mean, the majority of people, I think, who are our age, they don't love those kind of pursuits, and they're on Wall Street, and they're in places like that because they just are there to get the money that sustains their life, which is more and more expensive, especially where we live. And so, you're kind of stuck in a weird thing. And then
I know a lot of guys who work on Wall Street that make $200K a year, $300K a year, and they're not happy. They're not happy because their whole life is devoted to that job and to be able, like you said, sustain that income, but they can't do the things they want to do.
And is it really fun? I mean, is there any part of doing that? Would it be better if you're engineering in Silicon Valley or in some other startup place than engineering finances?
Sure.
Which we have too much of a focus on.
But look at the guys who work for Apple in that whole Silicon Valley. What is it? What's the campus called out there?
The Stanford one?
No, for Apple, their whole for the employees only, and it's like their training facility.
Yes.
My Cupertino.
Oh yeah, Cupertino. Yeah.
My friend who works for Apple went there. He got chosen or whatever, selected to go there, and he spent, I think, a month there. I mean, that's the life. He told me everything, how it was out there. People, how they worked, how they lived, just people's attitudes. I think he saw Al Gore walking around one day, and it's just like, man, those people love their job. And I'm not huge in the Mac, just because I'm not I have anything against it. I'm just not really, that too huge. But I can appreciate working for a company like a Google or something where the employees want to work there.
Yeah. Well, and how about Google? The fact that they had that, from what I've read, they've sort of toned this down, which is not a good thing, but I can't verify that. But they had the 20% time where every employee at Google, you worked Monday through Thursday, and then on Friday you came to work, but you didn't work on Google stuff. You did whatever you wanted to do.
That's pretty cool.
And that's where Gmail came from. That's where Google News came from. It might have been where Google Maps came from. Some of their greatest innovations, if not all of them, came from when employees were allowed to let their minds wander.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, how many of your best ideas come in the shower or come in when you're running?
Yeah.
I mean, you need space to create when you're told to go. First of all, when you're told to go somewhere for a certain amount of time every day, you're kind of compensating for the time you have to be there. You're not going all out.
I just keep thinking office space. I just keep thinking of office space. That's how it is. You're just mundane 9 to 5, hating your life come Monday.
Yeah. And then people start to exist within that world like it's its own ecosystem. And all you do is just the amount you need to do to get through that day or to get through that meeting.
What are your thoughts on, say, a 4-day, 40-hour work week, and give people a 3-day week. And you think that would?
I think having another day would be great. I think they're afraid.
Warren Buffett recommended that. Just do 4 10-hour work days.
Yeah, and at 10 hours a day.
Yeah, 10 hours. Yeah, 10 hours a day.
10 hours a day. I'd love if it was even just do the 4 and let the. I mean, how fresh do you feel when you have a third day?
There's so much you'd accomplish with one free day.
Yeah,
I mean, your morale's higher.
It's so much bigger because when you get to, first of all, for me, when you get to a Friday night, I'm beat to hell. No matter what I did, no matter how successful the week is, no matter how much sleep I got, I'm just beat down. I almost can't do something on Friday night a lot of times unless it's early on.
Right.
Plus, the commute adds to it, even though I love the commute because I get to listen to things, which I like, and you get used to it. It's amazing how the body acclimates to that. It acclimates to like everything. But it's not till Sunday morning where I'm like fully me again with like all the energy.
But it's only one more day, and then back to work Monday.
And then the worst of it is you got rested up for Sunday, so you feel great. Maybe you're reading, watching football, doing things, building baby stuff all the time now. But then Sunday night, I'm so rested that I can't go to bed at my normal time.
Yeah.
Maybe I had extra coffee. Maybe I had some beer, which sometimes can keep me up. So I go to bed at 1. Then I wake up at 6:45, and now the sleep deficit has started again.
Well, when the baby comes, it's going to be waking up at 4 o'clock.
That's right.
Taking turns.
Right. That's exactly right. And so we are not our best selves in this kind of construction that we've created. And I think we've created it because we don't want people out. We want to keep people in a place.
Yeah.
So the roads are not congested, so that, people can't be doing things that they shouldn't do. But man, it would make things so much better. And I think it would fix a lot. Even if you told people they could work at home 4 hours on Friday, but work at home and just check in, do your 4 hours, and then you move on. It's just having that day.
I fortunately have a job where I could, if I had to, work from home for a day or two. I don't like to do that because I feel if I take advantage of it, I'm not doing. I can't get the accounts I want to get. I can't, get the sales I want to get, whatever. But if I had to work from home, I could.
Yeah.
I'm not required to punch in.
Right.
But I work 7 days a week essentially.
Well, and people know you're working.
Yeah. No.
They're seeing things. My phone you're getting stuff done.
I'm getting a bunch of text messages. They're my accounts. What do you got coming out? I need this. I need that. Talk to me about this beer. So I'm working, and my work week technically starts tomorrow on a Sunday. Our list goes out to all of our accounts, and I'm working Sunday. So I technically work 7 days a week. I'm required to work 5. But I have that freedom to where I could take a day or two, just work from home, do what I have to do, handle my stuff, and then, hit the ground running. But usually I'm 5 days a week, in the city.
But you're moving around, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're
absolutely.
Not just, which changes the complexion of work.
Absolutely.
Too, when you get to like,
I enjoy my job. Yeah, I enjoy my job. I used to work for AT&T Wireless when I was younger, and it was 9 to 5 behind a desk, and I can't envision doing that anymore.
It's hard.
It's unless you really like it, I can't envision doing that.
Yeah.
Even the guys in the brew house, I know it's such a physical demanding job, but they're moving around, they're doing something, they're creating something, they're making something, as opposed to sitting behind a desk wanting to hang yourself.
Yeah. No, it's the movement is a big deal.
Yes,
I mean,
100%.
I have a lot of work I have to do at a desk. I work in a cool place. I work with good people. I'm working on technology, so it's right at my wheelhouse. When I was at the Nets, it was like you had the content part, which I love too. Mm-hmm. So it was great. When I was at the Nets, I never felt like I was working.
Are you like your current job now? Are you stagnant? You have to sit at the desk, or can you kind of move around, do things?
I mean, I don't have as much. A lot of my work is through a computer.
Okay.
So it's running Google AdWords campaigns. It's doing search engine optimization. It's running social media profiles and, doing ads on social media, building websites.
But you don't feel like you can't move around if you have to. I know there are some jobs, especially when I worked at a call center when I was younger, you couldn't leave your desk unless you were at a 15-minute break or you went to the bathroom.
Yeah.
It was like school.
No, I can move around, and I'm given a lot of freedom, and a lot of times if I have to go somewhere, I'm sort of a blind eye is turned.
Right.
If I have to go out, just
as long as you get the work done.
Yeah, as long as you're answerable to the worst thing you can do is a client has to go to the head of your company or something because they couldn't reach you. If your clients can reach you and in work hours,
yes.
And you can get what you need done, or you could still manage your teams.
Yes.
Then there's really nothing for a boss to say at that point.
Exactly.
They're just being silly if they're like, well, you have to be here. But if they're brought in, it's now brought a range of anxiety to them because now they're afraid that there's a deeper problem with an account, and that if they're being reached out to, does this mean that this is just where it pushed up above the level and there's been underservicing happening the whole time? And then now they got to do forensics in a way where they have to go back and they have to see what the email chains were. What's this?
Or did you mess up? Did you not do what you're supposed to do?
And that's always the worst. And there are a lot of times where the clients are not the best,
Sure.
They're totally, especially in technology, the vast majority of people are going to be much more deficient than maybe you are. And that's because that's what you do. But sometimes I'm amazed at times the unknowing of people in the real world. Like there's not even I could get in trouble, but there's not even on the other end, like someone who's a professional at times. Because a lot of times in tech, companies will almost put their youngest people or even interns on the web because it's like, well, they grew up in the web, they know the web, but they don't know how projects are supposed to go, the nuance and the way you keep on top of things, scheduling, all that. So it can be exhausting. And then when you get through a launch, you just want to be like, all right, I could use a couple of days vacation from this launch almost.
Sure.
But that's the key, is keep your portfolio of things. If it doesn't rise up out of you and you're keeping that exposure away from other people who don't want to be exposed to it, because if the head of a company is exposed to that, they're already exposed to enough. It's going to make them feel like they're getting hit by all sides, and they're going to overdo it. And then they're going to blame the leaving.
Sure.
Even though it's not. And humans are humans. But you kind of hit on it. What are you doing now?
In terms of
your job with the beer stuff?
Well, part of my job entails being in charge of sales for my territory, which is Old Manhattan, North Brooklyn, Westchester, and any new accounts that I can bring into that area. Now, when I started, I was the first technically sales guy for the brewery.
Barrier Brewing,
yes, out of Oceanside, Long Island. There's lovely bottles there. I was the first sales guy, so I was in charge of all the boroughs, Westchester, whatever we had, any area we had, it was me. And we had about 150, maybe a little less than 150 accounts already existing, maybe a little less. And then within a year, I brought slightly over 100. Now, doesn't mean those 100 accounts are ordering 100 keg, a week. Some might do 1 or 2 kegs a month. Some might do 2 or 3 kegs a week. But they're sales and they're new accounts. So I've been hauling ass just to try to get new accounts, maintain these relationships, build relationships, and make Barrier a destination. I want people to seek Barrier out and just be like, oh, you got Barrier on tap. Don't you know what it is? No, I don't care. Just give me a Barrier. So now we're trying to reach out to higher end restaurants because we make a quality liquid and we want to be served with a quality food and quality establishment. So you're not going to find Barrier in your corner bar in New York. That guys who don't clean their lines, where it's just Bud Miller Coors on tap.
Right.
So people appreciate a good product, and people are seeking us out.
We have an awesome beer place out here down the road.
Yeah, you're telling me
Sparta, called Mohawk House.
Mohawk, yeah.
50 beers on tap, always changing out craft beers.
You must get a lot of carton.
We do get carton.
Yeah, we're good friends with the guys at Carton. Augie Carton, who's the owner or one of the owners. They're good friends of ours. They make great beer. We collaborated. We did a beer together last year. It was pretty tasty. Hopefully we collaborate again in the future. They're one of my favorite guys out here. Kane brews amazing beer. They do an awesome IPA. And there's a lot of good guys popping up in Jersey, and I'm glad to see that.
Oh yeah, well, Bolero Snout.
Yeah.
They went to my high school, Bergen Catholic.
Oh, no kidding.
Those guys. I mean, not my grade, but they went there. But yeah, the place is awesome. I was shocked moving out here because I feel like I moved to almost another state in some ways. Just an amazing place. Awesome bar.
Nice.
And it'll probably be... Now, why aren't you able to be in New Jersey yet?
Well, New York, New Jersey, fortunately has a law to where small breweries can self-distribute. So we don't need a distributor in our state. So I believe it's up to the 60 or 70,000 barrels. We can self-distribute. And we're only brewing 2,500 barrels, which is a lot for our small size. So we're fortunate enough to where we can self-distribute. But if we want to go to another state, whether it be Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, we have to have an outside distributor. So we would need a New Jersey distributor to distribute our kegs, which means we lose money on those kegs.
Right.
So if we sell our kegs for, and this is just thrown out there, say we sell a keg for 150, the distributor would buy it for 110, maybe less, and then they would sell it for 150 or 160. So
it's not worth the while yet.
Not yet. There's certain things we can do. I'm going to hopefully plan a couple of 1 or 2 day events for a couple of my friends' bars in Jersey and feature our beer. And I think I can get like a 24 or 48 hour, just pay a fee, like $100 to the state liquor authority, and they'll let it happen. We could sign like a 15 or 30 day contract with a distributor. We could do that. If there's like a beer fest or something that would benefit Barrier. But right now it's not going to happen in Jersey.
How'd you learn how to do your job?
From being in the industry, from just being ground floor, even when we started at 6 Point, we all kind of cut our teeth at 6 Point.
How'd you get into 6 Point?
My friend Sean Redmond, who's now my partner in sales, is an excellent brewer, and he was a brewer for 6 Point. He was their lead brewer when I came along, and I kind of apprenticed under him for a year. He really took me under his wing.
As a sales guy?
No,
as a beer brewer.
Brewing, yeah. Okay. So whenever he had the chance, I would kind of learn from him. Pete Dixon, who was a former head brewer for 6 Point, now is brewing for Carton, another great brewer. So, I kind of like cut my teeth and learn what I could from those guys as much as I could whenever, they, needed me doing whatever chores around the brewery. But I was only there 1 day a week. So very limited. They would teach me something one day.
Yeah.
I would either forget or, kind of get mixed up on it. So I kind of had to like learn the same thing over and over and over just to get it right. That's what sucks, doing it 1 day a week. I would recommend somebody, if they have the time to intern, do it minimum 3 days a week if you could, if you really want to learn. So I kind of learned the ins and outs through that. Running a beer store, really learned the under end.
You started the beer store?
Yeah, it was called Prospect. It's called Prospect Heights Beer Works, and I started it with a couple of guys, a couple of partners.
And that's in Brooklyn.
Yes, that's in Brooklyn. It's Prospect Heights, Brooklyn.
How does one go about starting a beer shop?
Guy used to own the building. Used to own the store. The store moved. They bought it out from under him, I believe. And he's like, "Yeah, I just want to start another beer store." And his partner reached out to me through a mutual friend at 6 Point. And that's how it just got started. I knew what I wanted to do, a craft beer forward store.
Yeah,
that's what they wanted. The area was changing. That's the beauty of the free market. There's a demand. We tried to fill it.
And so you were in there like a lot? Like were you
in
the place?
Yeah, it was 70 hours minimum a week.
Oh my God.
I was fortunate to have an apartment about 5 blocks away, so I'd walk there every day.
And you probably saw some crazy stuff.
Oh yeah. Unfortunately it didn't work out. I'm not going to talk trash about the owner, but we just didn't see eye to eye after a while. We had our differences. He wanted it run a certain way. It was his money.
Yeah, sure.
That's that.
That's right. But I mean, the people rolling through there, you must have,
Oh yeah, but I learned from the sales side, dealing with reps, dealing with distributors. That's where I really learned, okay, this is how they do things. So when I went to Barrier and they brought me on, a lot of it was kind of like learn as I go.
Yeah.
And it's either sink or swim.
Sales. Like,
yeah,
that's kind of the neat and scary things. The scary thing about sales is that sometimes people go, okay, I'm in sales and I can go out and do whatever I want, take meetings and all this. And while you're doing that, it feels like there's no pressure on, but you always got to be delivering. The delivery 100%.
Is so big. And the good thing about beer is I'm passionate about beer. I know how beer is made. I know about beer. I know the brewing side, and now I'm starting to learn the sales side. So it's like, this is going to come, and we make a really good beer.
Yeah.
At least I think so. That helps.
Yeah.
That really helps. If I were selling cars and the car sucked, man, I really got to be a damn good salesman.
That's right.
But I really feel that I've gotten so much more experience as the job goes on, but I'm personable and I make friends with my accounts. I want my accounts to be like, oh, Mike's coming in. He's not here to make the sale. He's here to give me his time. And I'll come in, I'll have a beer, I'll talk to you. Man, I just want to keep that relationship going. And there's a lot of guys in the business that I started accounts with that I consider friends. So
yeah, it's almost like Silicon Valley Brewery in a way. It's like there's these companies, these big companies, and then employees for whatever reason might decide, I think we can either do it better or we have a different solution to the same question, you know? And you break off and it's like a startup.
That's very
and you build
big
it up
in the beer industry. A lot of guys who cut their teeth brewing at one brewery will be like, all right, time to start my own because I want my own philosophy. I want to do this. I want to make my own beer or do that. So a lot of it starts off because of that.
Are people making good money in brewing?
I would say unless you own the company,
right.
It's you're a glorified janitor in the brew house. It's really what it is. You really have to love making beer. Yeah, there's good money to be made. I think on the sales end, especially if you hustle ass and really do a good job on that end, you can make a lot of money. Sales commission, stuff like that.
In the startup world, a startup, obviously builds up, and the big thing is it's not so much making money in subscriptions, but users have become the new currency. People build up a big amount of users, and they almost make themselves indispensable to the market.
Beer. It's kind of as with beer.
And, yeah,
the users seek your product out.
Yeah, and like you look at something like WhatsApp, right? They get bought for $16 billion by
sick.
That was Facebook. I think they got bought by that. While Beats gets bought by $3 billion by Apple. So it's like users have become the currency.
Yeah.
Now, is there something like that in the beer industry where you get so many people loving the beer? Do the Facebooks of the beer world buy a company like that, or how does that work?
It's funny you mentioned that. Anheuser-Busch, or I guess Anheuser-Busch InBev.
Yep.
They're now going after craft breweries. Like Blue Point was just sold. They're one of the first craft breweries out in Long Island.
Yeah.
They were just purchased for like $25 or $26 million. Goose Island in Chicago.
Yeah.
They were purchased 100% by them. So they're starting to gobble up, or at least take action for these smaller breweries. So say if Anheuser-Busch InBev goes to Joe Schmo Brewing and is like, we like what you're doing, you're starting to get, we'll buy 50% of you, or we'll give you we'll help you with distribution. And that's kind of like how they started with Goose Island. And next thing you know, they own 100% of the company. It's crazy.
That's very interesting.
So I think that's going to be the trend where the big three, the Coors, Miller, Bud, those guys are going to start targeting some of the smaller craft brewers. And I say smaller, much bigger than us, than Barrier in terms of volume and size, and guys who've been around for 10, 15 years. They're going to go after those guys. And it's tough when, if I opened up a brewery 10 years ago and now I'm starting to make some decent money and I got a mega, brewery coming to me and saying, I'll give you 30 million or 40 million. And you can still be a part of the board.
Wow.
And still be on salary for the next 5 years.
Yeah. So that is happening.
It's hard to turn that down.
Well, and isn't there something with being a craft brewer where there's like laws that you can only have a certain amount of barrels to be considered? Like,
yeah. It's funny because Jim Cook, who's the owner of Sam Adams, is, I believe, the president of the Craft Brewers Guild or Association. He keeps changing because Sam Adams has grown so big, and it used to be 1 million barrels, a million barrels. Now it's, I think, 7 million or 6. I'm probably off by a little, but because Sam Adams is doing so much, he's increasing it because he still wants to consider Sam Adams a craft brewer. Now I think Sierra Nevada is over 1 million, or right about 1 million.
Yeah,
that's crazy. But they're still making great beer.
Well, they're still considered craft to people. It's almost craft is as much in the kind of feeling of what it is as it is.
The term craft is, you could take it any way you want. But
everything's craft now in some ways.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of this is almost what I wonder with you brought up about the Anheuser, or the InBev. You see them buying them, and the smart drinkers, does that end up being a stigma that they were bought? Do the people think,
oh yeah,
this is now them? Or is it kind of like when we bring back to the tech angle, Facebook bought Instagram and then allowed Instagram to be Instagram? Sort of Apple has bought Beats and they're allowing them to be Beats. And so they're still maintaining that, but it's like, where does it, or do we get too much into?
I think you'd have to see it from a really kick-ass brewery. Like Goose Island is a good brewery, and they make some amazing beers. They have like a specialty like sub-crafted where they make these awesome like signature series, these Bourbon County stouts, these special Belgian beers where they're super crafty, and they're still doing that. They still have that luxury to still do that, and they have unlimited resources now.
Yeah.
So as long as that keeps going, I don't think the beer drinker is going to turn away. Now I do have some accounts in New York, respected beer stores, who refuse to sell it because of that.
Wow.
I'm like, well, this is a sold out beer, man. You'll sell out in a heartbeat. Yeah, I still refuse because they sold out.
Well, it's amazing too, because
there's a lot of beer drinkers who do the same thing.
Yeah, it's like when we were kids and we listened to the music we did. If they signed to a major label, you didn't want to listen to them anymore.
Right.
And when other people liked it, you didn't want to listen to it anymore. But now I look at it and I see, I appreciate that a band was able to make it all to that level and make money off
Absolutely, 100%. But I also appreciate a band like Fugazi, where Atlantic is like, here's a blank check, Atlantic Records, and they're like, no, you don't get it.
Yeah,
we're
amazing.
Actually not in it for the money. I know people say that, but we're actually not.
Yeah.
That's beyond respectable. You're just kind of like, hey, you know what? You guys do your thing. Awesome. More power to you.
Well, that brand equity
rare,
by doing that, equity by doing that probably makes them enough to live, because of all the people who love them go, okay, we're going to pay into
this. You know better than anybody now, the music industry now, you don't make dick off of record sales. Now it's live shows and merchandise.
Exactly right. It's going on tour with the stuff. But because it's amazing when you think back to people, even 30, 40, 50 years ago, like they just drank this stuff. And now I've become completely, as you probably have, a complete beer snob in the traditional sense, but it's because it's like we almost rebel against anything that's homogenous now. And, the Buds, the Bud Lights, the Coors, the Millers, they're all just of kind of the same ilk, and you're not going to fully enjoy it. I mean, I go into having a beer, and with the alcohol content of these now, I have a great IPA. I could have like 2 of them and be fine.
You're good. Yeah, and you're good.
Yeah, and that's like nice. There's a certain part of craft beer, and this is my hypothesis. I'm not on the street like you are with the drinking culture and going around places owning a liquor, basically owning a liquor store, seeing the traffic coming in and out. I feel like it's harder to be an alcoholic with craft beer than it is with like mainstream beer.
I look at it this way. You're a functioning alcoholic.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel if you're drinking nothing but craft beer, you have that cutoff point when you're drunk. You
can't go past.
Say you drink a 6-pack of Dogfish 60-minute IPA or something. All right, I'm bloated, I'm full. I reach my point. But there's a different level of enjoyment too. I feel like if you get drunk, even on craft beer, you're happy. You're, as opposed to just pounding a 20-pack of Bud Light or just garbage. But here's the funny thing: as much into craft beer as I am, I still enjoy drinking a fresh Budweiser sometimes. Like Sunday football, I just want to drink, and I don't care what it is. Yeah, I'll knock back a Bud. I don't care. I'm not one of those people who's going to be like, oh, Budweiser. The fact that they can brew a liquid that in 6 or 7 different breweries throughout the country, it's the same identical beer. That's impressive. It's actually very, very, very impressive, their operations. It's true. Very hard to do that. Doesn't mean the beer is going to taste good. Obviously, compared to what local and regional beer breweries are producing. But hey, every once in a while, give me a Bud. I don't care,
Sure. Well, they're getting, when you're at a game too, sometimes the costs are so absurd that you'll just get that Bud because you want to have a beer at a game. It's still 5% alcohol, the regular one?
It's 5%, 4.5%, 5%.
And sometimes they do have craft though, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
I like at the games, but they're so expensive that it's brutal. But the actual experience of craft beer makes you enjoy drinking it as well.
Yeah, I took a beer course out in Durango, Colorado, through the Siebel Institute of Technology, which is like the 2nd or 3rd biggest brewing school in the country, and they're based out of Chicago. The course was in Durango, and Randy Mosher, who's a beer authority. If you Google his name, he writes a lot of books. He's a part of the old Chicago Beer Society. He's one of the authorities on craft beer. Him and Ray Daniels, they were both my professor or the proctors of the course, and he said a great thing. He's like, beer is a destination. He's like, craft beer should be a destination. You want to know where this from where it was brewed to why it was brewed. You want to feel like what you're drinking is eventually a destination.
Yeah.
And I'm like, beer destination. And then I finally understand what he says, now it's like
it's like a great
there's
album.
a lot that goes into that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like like a brewery is a great album or a band.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
churn out songs that you continue to like.
Like Matt McQueenie's IPA. Man, I felt like I just went for a ride with this beer.
Yeah.
You know, and
like you think of what went into making it.
Right.
Literally that, you know,
there's a story behind it.
Completely.
Like our story, Barrier's story, we were destroyed by the hurricane.
Really?
Oh man, we were wrecked. I think we were shut down for 4 or 5 months. This is right when I was coming on.
Oh man.
We had 4 feet of floodwater in the brewery, and we just went to a new facility. We had tanks that were literally floating on its side. Oh. We were shut down, but luckily, the good thing about the craft beer community is, yes, we are in competition with our local breweries, but we also help each other out. It's the only industry where my brewery success will help yours eventually, and vice versa. So I don't know if you've ever heard of Omegang.
Oh yeah.
They reached out to us.
Right?
Yeah, Cooperstown. Yep. They reached out to us and said, you know, asked how we were doing, if we're okay, and we replied and said, no, actually, we got destroyed. We told them what happened, and they allowed us to come up to their facility, which is humongous compared to our standards. And then we brewed one of our beers there on their system. We used their house yeast, their fermentation, everything. And we brewed a beer called Barrier Relief. It was one of our Belgian IPAs done on their system. So it had a little bit different taste, a little different flavor. It tasted great.
Well, because they're very Belgium, right?
Yeah.
Did you do that on purpose?
No.
Because it was
probably. Yeah, probably. It was made right before I came on. I'm assuming that's why. So we used like their Belgian house yeast and all that stuff. And one of the big distributors in New York, which is Union Distributors, who distributes Omegang, I think donated $10 per keg or a couple dollars per keg to Barrier for the relief, and we ended up getting like $26,000 from that. And that was huge.
Wow!
They just literally opened, and then a lot of the local breweries in Long Island we ended up brewing a beer at Blue Point called Surge Protector.
Wow!
And some of those proceeds helped. So we had a lot of money, probably about $30,000. Of the $100,000 in damage we had went back into the brewery, and it was a good thing. It was, you know, some good came out of it. We took over a little space next to us, and we made that our tap room. So we have a tap room. So things have been on the up and up. Kind of a blessing in disguise. I hate to say it, because the owners of the company, Craig Freimark and Evan Klein, you know, they're without a job for 5 months, and they put everything on the line. Everything they had went to this company. So they were this close, you know, to keeping the door shut. Just be like, well, that's a loss. There's nothing we can do.
It's crazy.
So fortunately, and you know, for me to have a job and for those guys, it's starting to thrive. We're starting to really blossom.
That's cool. It's a cool thing to be a part of.
But it's a good story, and I tell a lot of new accounts that, and they're like, hey, weren't you guys shut down by the storm? I'm like, as a matter of fact, yes. And I tell them about what, you know, the backstory, but it all goes back to having a story.
Right.
And there's so many breweries that have awesome stories.
And that is the great promise of any brand or sales. You got to have a story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the story could be for Bud. We are everywhere, but you always have to have a story. That's the biggest part of anything. I mean, my brother has a really good friend from his fraternity who the friend and his brothers, they have a coffee place in Brooklyn.
Oh, cool.
And it got wiped out.
Where in Brooklyn?
I can't think of it off the top of my head. But they were wiped out completely.
Oh, wow.
And so I think they had the same thing where there was a lot of people looking out for people. I mean, you really see that in a lot of destructive things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 9/11, it happened. People were very much looking out for folks. You look at something like Sandy. I mean, that was such a shock to our system here.
It's a shame, though, that it takes a disaster like that, whether it be natural or man-made, to really band and bring people together.
Well, it's the shell. It's the shell we all build living in this area. We don't want to be hurt by anything, so we kind of walk around and build this shell deeper and deeper and farther and farther, because everyone walks around New York really with a certain look on their face, like, don't mess with me. But
we have that survivor mentality, like, oh, we're survivors. 9/11, we're survivors. And I think that can hurt us sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, because you then can't emotionally get touched by things.
Right.
And that's an important thing. And you do see that going elsewhere in the country where people are nice and you're almost like shocked by it.
Yeah.
You go, wait, what? Why did you say hi to me? What do you want?
Yeah.
And
a lot of people are definitely, like you said, that they're shut off from everybody else. I see that all the time on the subways, from living in the city.
Oh, yeah.
Being on the subways, everybody's so detached.
But yet we want to live where the people are.
Yeah.
But then we don't want to actually.
But imagine living in the city and you're so close to everybody, and it's like you're on top of each other, and yet still being that detached.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, Jesus, really?
Well, coming from Mawa, where it was, especially when we were growing up, I mean, it's grown up even,
right,
or it's built out even more.
I still thought there was that sense of community in a sense.
Yeah. But I mean, there was space.
Yes.
Too. I mean, like the only thing you would hear at night was the train sometimes. Right. And, now I'm in Sparta, which I feel like is Mawa 20 years ago.
It's funny because when I was driving up here, I was like, man, this kind of reminds me of Mawa.
Yeah.
Like driving through Airmont. I lived up on Airmont. And I was like, man, this kind of reminds me of Airmont.
It's a lot like, no, it reminds me a lot of Mawa. But you get to the city, and the city really does blow you away. The amount of people that they jam into that thing.
Unbelievable.
I mean, even Brooklyn, right? I mean, it's getting even crazier with the amount of people they jam in there.
And all the rents are just going up. It's crazy.
Gentrification. What did Spike Lee had something to say about that last year, didn't he?
I'm sorry. I just hate when every time that guy opens his mouth, it's just something. It's negativity. And I understand, and from living in it, and I lived in a not a rough area, but not the best of areas. Yeah. I completely understand and see where his point of view, being black man growing up in an area where there was no white people, there was no white money, but there was a rebuttal to his article by another. So I forgot, it was a business owner, somebody who lived there all his life, another black guy. Yeah. And he was like, listen, I'm black, and I'm actually for gentrification, because when people were making money, when there was black money in these neighborhoods, they took that money and left. So they didn't reinvest it back into the community.
Right.
And he's like, I'm guilty of it. And he kind of like went on to his story. And he's like, now that there's white money coming in here and other money is good. It's, it's building this neighborhood back up to what it could be. But Spike Lee is like, well, where are we going? Right. Now we're being pushed out into Jersey, into other parts of New York, into the Oranges, into Newark, Jersey City, whatever. Why do we have to be forced out of our homes? So I definitely see where he's coming from, but I also understand where the other person's attitude was like, well, when there was black money, you guys left, you didn't put it back into the community. So, but I wouldn't know. I'm not from that area. You know what I mean? So I definitely see some, just not welcome attitude. Like, yeah, we don't want your money.
Well, that's one of the hardest things of especially living in an area like this that booms and busts and is such a wanted destination, because there's so much commerce happening in New York it is almost like it's like the Apple store by which all the apps, which are us, plug into it.
It's crazy because the beer store I was running was 6 blocks from Barclays. So really? I'd walk to Barclays all the time. Huh. And we had new businesses opening up, buying beer from our store, just deliver there and everything. And I saw them like, man, business is going to start booming because of this arena.
Yeah.
But gentrification, it's crazy.
Well,
you don't see, you would think it would just be a black community, which it was. Not anymore. So I can understand, going back to Spike Lee's argument, I can understand that. So
yeah, the hardest part I have is that, like where you live, I lived in Hoboken once. I have a brother who lives in Jersey City, and I have a lot of friends who live in Jersey City. I work in Newark. Everything constantly becomes, where's the next place where we can get that reminds us of this place, but we can pay less? Like, why
Jersey City Heights?
Yeah, and now people are starting to move to Newark. Like,
oh man,
why can't? I don't understand why we can never be just happy with where we are or what we're doing. Every part of
because everybody wants to get away from home, or they want to get away from the town they grew up in, or
But like a place like where the Brooklyn stuff, and you've said it's become very almost painful to live there, and that it just everything changes. Like
we're priced out.
You're priced out, and like
middle class with good credit, with 700 plus credit, can't buy a house if they want to, or buy a building. You're priced out.
Yeah, and you got to move to a place where you don't want to necessarily move. You want to be where you
go further into Brooklyn. Yeah,
you want to be where you are. But I kind of hate that aspect of it, even though I'm a home buyer and I want mine to appreciate. Although my plan is to be where I am for the duration. I moved into the house I want to grow into, and then when it's time, move on. But we turned houses almost into ATM machines. We've turned property into a complete business unto itself. And there's no longer like a feeling of communities. Okay, this is where we are. We're going to settle here. I'm going to have this neighbor. I want to, we're going to be friendly here. We're going to do this. And it's like, it's constantly a game of how can we underbuy the property, rise it up, sell it, change the entire complexion of the area, and then move on. And then if there's another bust, hopefully we sold it at the top. The next people come in and do it.
You feel like Mawa's becoming that now?
I haven't thought of it as much. I haven't really been around there, and probably, I mean, my family still lives there. But I think Mawa, which is crazy because when we grew up, Mawa felt like an outpost. It was like the last stop on the train.
Yeah.
Suffern really was.
Yeah.
But the last stop where people truly commute to New York City, but they're really out there. Now it just feels like
it's not that bad of a commute when you think about it.
No, it's not a bad commute. And now it feels like just like a lower Bergen County town. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just it just becomes normal. And now I live really far out in a way, although you get acclimated to that, as I said, which is crazy. But yeah, everything is always changing. We can never, and I think that causes a lot of discontent within people because you never feel like you can be settled. Mm-hmm. The human condition almost wants to at least have some aspects that are settled. Like, I'm in place. I can now go do other things because I know I'm anchored to this place. There's so much upset. There's so much moving and there's just such a changing of towns. I mean, even a town like Mawa, they brought in so many condos, like behind the AMP shopping area there, and they've brought them in all over the place. And
aren't they building a mall there now?
They might be. And what's crazy? Off of MacArthur, which is a main road off of Route 17.
Yeah,
the New York Stock Exchange's servers are like there.
UPS headquarters or something like that, or East Coast headquarters is there or something? Is that in the same area?
I think it's the same area, but like stocks are routed through there because they give like a text. Like I just often, and it's like what we talked about with, I mean, LA is crazy, upset, changing all the time. New people moving in, old people moving out, neighborhoods changing, entire swaths of artist communities going here, going there. Although I do think it's cool that podcasting kind of has taken on its highest level right now around the LA area in many ways. It's where like this kind of pirate radio aspect has taken on.
I wish I had that available, as an outlet 10, 12 years ago, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Who was one of the first to really capitalize on that? Would that be Adam Carolla? Was
Adam Carolla was really a big one. He was big because he had a certain amount of people who listen to him on regular radio, but it's like network television now. Network television, a show would get canceled 15 years ago if it had 20 million viewers. Now, 20 million viewers, people are immortalized in gold.
Yes.
Adam Carolla had a radio show. I think he took over for Howard Stern when he left too. At some point. First it was David Lee Roth, which was a mess.
Yeah.
But he took over, and I don't think he was getting the ratings that people wanted for network level radio.
Right.
But when he was let go and he starts a podcast, when you're having millions of people listen to a podcast, all of a sudden the dynamic changes.
Sure.
The same expectations of a network and how much they're expecting advertisers to pay, how many listeners they need to break even. It's like oil when they say that, like Russia, they're only making a profit when oil is $100 a gallon, and $100 a gallon is really hard to get to now. But when you take away all of those kind of artificial markers, all of a sudden you have a lot more success. You don't have an overseer telling you what to do, who aren't going to be as smart in the creative sense. You probably saw that a lot in Hollywood.
Oh God.
But they're holding the purse strings. And so all of a sudden they are a genius. You see it with sports all the time. Look at all these owners. They didn't make all their money in sports.
Oh, no.
They come to it with their money they made, starting up Home Depots or starting up Paychecks or starting up whatever the company was. And then they come in, they have no idea. The first couple of years, they let idiots who sweet talk them into running a team. They think that they're the real deal. They run a team into a ground, and then the owner goes, I'm going to take over. And the owner has no idea what they're doing, And so that, that kind of aspect is, it's a very tough thing with all the ups and downs. And I think you just, like we said, always moving is important, but you also want some stability. And you're probably happy where you are, and now you have to like try to move.
Yeah, you're not going to get stability single guy living in New York or Manhattan, because every year it's like, oh, I can find a cheaper place, or I can find a cheaper. So I'm like a nomad. Every year or every 2 years I'm going to a cheaper area, a better area, whatever. So like here, if you have a home, you can raise your family here. This might be it for you. This is your 20, 30, 40, 50 year game plan.
Well, it's like riding a wave. We were lucky when we started looking that we literally bought at the bottom of the market.
Mm-hmm.
This house was actually a short sale, and we didn't even know it. Things were moving so quick, it turned into a short sale that week.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a mom and 2 kids living here, so they kept the house in good shape.
Yep.
They just didn't pay for it for a year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they got divorced, I guess, and the dad left. But, you know, so while I'm saying that it stinks, the pricing out and the bottom of the market, like we rode it in the right way. And a lot of life is like riding a wave.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you're at the beach, you see a wave coming in, you're like, I'm going to ride this one. And then it ended up being not a very good wave.
Right.
And then you turn around and the awesome wave and all these other people are riding it. You're like, oh.
Yeah.
And it's sort of how life is. You know, you just try your best to see over the waves to see what's the best one to ride.
But say that to yourself 10 years ago. You'd be like, what are you talking about, man? Get away from me.
I know everything.
Yeah.
You know, I'm 21. I know everything.
I am ready to take on the world. What are you, old man? Get away from me, you know?
So you went from LA right to Vegas.
I went LA, came back to Jersey for a couple of months, went to Vegas for about a year, and then came back.
So
Vegas till 06. Stayed in Jersey till 2010. I've been in New York since 2010.
Now I have a hard time when I go to Vegas. I'm so excited the first day.
I just came back from Vegas. I was in Vegas last week. I go just for a week, kind of get away and play some cards and see some friends.
Yeah, no, Vegas is an unbelievable place because a lot of times when you come from the East, you go out there, you take like a 7 a.m., 8 a.m. flight or something, and you get there at 11 a.m.
Oh yeah, but you're going to bed at like 9 o'clock.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, but you get there, and that first day you go, this is the greatest place in the world. I'm doing everything I ever wanted to do, and then you're so hyper stimulated that the next day you go, okay, I can do this again, and then by the third day you're just like, I can't do this anymore, and there's nothing else to do there.
I found after day 3 or 4, I was like, I'm doing the same thing I did the first day. I'm doing the same thing I did the second day. Luckily for me, there were some new breweries, small breweries that were popping up, so I got to go travel around, play ambassador for my brewery, and
that's cool.
And it's cool within the brewing industry, is if you verify that you work for a brewer. There's kind of like this brewery, friendship. Yeah, they give you, and it's like, oh, the beer's on the house, or hey, let me take you to the back.
Let me give you the stuff we're working on.
Yeah, they start opening up the rare stuff, and it's like, oh, cool. Well, you come out to me, we'll take care of you, and it's kind of like you get taken care of, and it's kind of like an unwritten code.
Well, I think too, if you're an informed consumer,
mm-hmm.
places that really take pride in what they do want to show you something too.
Oh, absolutely. We have guys that come to the brewery all the time, and it's like either they're a home brewer and they're making good stuff, or they're just very knowledgeable and respect what you do.
Yeah.
And ask you good questions.
Yeah.
That's a guy like, you know what, I like this guy. Hey, I'm going to open up a little something special for you, or I'm going to show you around real quick. Somebody that appreciates what you do.
Yeah. It's human conversation. Like when I went to Napa once with my wife, we were at the William Hill Brewery, and we had like 35 tastings at this point when you go to a couple, and it's like, so much fun. And then just the views there are so unbelievable. Like what a place, Napa Valley. But we're in there and I just get to talking, they have the 3 that they're going to give you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I had this Malbec. I had the Coppola Malbec. It's really good. And I was like, I think I read that they were Argentine grapes, but they grew them in Napa Valley. And I'm like, that's so cool. And they go, we got a great Malbec. We don't usually give it. Let me open it up. And so
that's cool.
They appreciate that you did
a little homework,
and cared and talked about it. And then all of a sudden you're getting,
because how much people do you think walk in there and be like, yeah, just give me your strongest wine.
Yeah.
Give me your tastiest wine. Yeah. It's like, oh God.
Do you have a Shiraz?
when I do beer festivals and I sample out at beer festivals, everybody comes to me. Give me your strongest beer. Oh. Give me your hoppiest beer. I'm just like, dude, I'm pouring a butternut squash beer. You want some or not?
Yeah.
And every brewer will tell you that's the same thing. So I can only imagine how it's at wineries. It's got to be the same thing.
I went to the beer festival, the New York one that was at the
Lexington Armory.
No, a couple of years ago it was at the South Street Seaport.
Oh yeah.
It was like raining, which was weird, but people had ponchos on at night.
Rain or shine, beers poured.
But it's so sad when you see the Coors Light tent. There's no one there. Like, what is Coors Light doing there? Why are they even
free advertising, man?
It's like, we know, dude. We know what you got.
People aren't going there to drink Coors Light.
It's a very funny thing. But when you're in Vegas, though, it just must be that feeling where a couple days in, when you go to visit it, how you get kind of overstimulated.
Try living there.
I'm saying. It must just be completely.
It became very routine. Wow. It was wake up, go to a job, hang out with the friends there, play cards, go home, play cards online, try to pay the rent, doing that.
What kind of job you have out there?
I worked for T-Mobile.
Oh, that was
in a call center, yeah.
And was that in like a suburb that was outside of Vegas?
Down the street from, I'd say it was about a mile and a half. Actually, it was next to Wayne Newton's estate.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's the part of Vegas, though, where you don't even see the Strip, right?
Oh, we were not far from the Strip. We were about 10 minutes by car from the Strip. But I was just surrounded by mountains. And I think Sierra Madres were by me. But yeah, we weren't far from the. Actually, we were close to the Strip. We were still Vegas. We weren't Henderson. We were Vegas.
You were still Vegas.
Yeah, it was still Vegas.
So it's pretty much everyone who's living there working on the Strip.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know many people working on the Strip. Downtown Vegas, which is old Vegas,
right?
Which is Zappos.
Yeah, didn't they turn that into like an innovative hub or something?
Absolutely. And they pumped a lot of money. So it's like the art district now.
That's cool.
And that's where I stay. When I go to Vegas, I stay downtown. I got a suite, a junior suite, it's like a 600 square foot room for $280 after tax for a week.
Oh my God.
That's ridiculous. And it's stylish. You're not staying in some cheap motel. It is a Vegas quality hotel room.
Wow.
No casino inside, just a strict hotel. And they're begging people to come out.
Wow.
So you can get some great deals.
Yeah, that's like
stay off the Strip.
Well, people are like, I want to stay at the Hard Rock, and then you're paying for it.
And you're paying for it in more than one way.
Oh my God.
And I hate the Strip. It's too touristy.
It is.
And imagine I work in Manhattan, so I'm walking down the tourist spots all the time.
Yeah. So you became good at playing cards online?
I became decent.
Yeah.
Rob, was my roommate, he's just incredible. And so I tried to pick up a little bit, from here and there. But it was tough. There's two types of cards. There's a cash player and there's a tournament player. So tournaments, say you buy in for $100. Mm-hmm. You can't lose more than that. Cash, you sit down on a 1-2 no limit. You always want to buy in 2 or 3 times, 100 times the big blind. So you want to sit down with $300, $200, $300, $400. You can lose your bankroll in one sitting.
Mm.
I suppose tournaments where you can make some money.
Yeah,
you're limited to what you lose. So if it's $1,000 buy-in, you can't lose more than that. You can win 100,000 or whatever. And there's two types of skill sets. There's a skilled tournament player and there's a skilled cash game. Skilled cash games where the money's at, obviously. So I never really excelled at the cash game. Decent, I could hold my own, but
And you have to have casual players. It's the only way to make money, right? Because they're
Oh no, there's fish. I mean, there's people that would throw your money at you, that suck you out, that bad beat you. Listen, math is a huge equation.
Yeah.
The best hand is going to lose sometimes. Just has to. You can run drive. I remember Rob used to tell me he would run drive for a month, and he would just his doesn't matter how much he outplays his opponent, they suck him out. Mathematically, they end up sucking him out with a bet.
So he doesn't make $1 over the month.
Basically breaks even, or he might be down.
Wow. That's a scary life.
It is. It's you have to be good at poker to really make a living at it. Fortunately for him, he was.
Yeah. I'm very intimidated by casinos.
Really?
I think that's what they want to.
It's very welcoming. Like it's 100 degrees outside, but it's 60 in the casino. It's like, I want to stay in here. Free drinks, cool. They're not really free.
I remember one time when I went to Vegas and someone was like, "Oh, just play blackjack," and
it's your best. It's technically your best odds.
But I had sort of a feeling of how to play it. But when you play it on your phone, it's completely different because there's certain things that the game on the phone takes care of.
Sure.
That like you don't have to think of when you're playing with people. And I remember I was like, I don't really want to play. I would go to Vegas and never play. I would just use like the pool or you go to eat or you drink. Or I'll do a one-arm bandit sometimes just because it's, even though it's totally losing, but I can't, that Wheel of Fortune. Oh my God. I love it. When you hit it and it's like, but of course you have to give up all your money to do it.
Of course. Yeah. You'll win one time, then lose the rest.
Exactly right. But I sat down to the table and I was like, oh yeah, it's a beginner table, play. I was like, okay. And I guess after a while I was making like the wrong decisions and they were getting like very, I couldn't tell if it was because they thought I was like really good and I was pretending or something, or if it was just like I was messing the table up by doing what I was doing. But the guy was like, you might want to get one of those cards. I'm like, what? He's like, one of the cards that tell you what to do. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, why don't you go get that card now?
Oh
and
no.
I was just like, oh man. And so it went from intimidated to just being like, you're the little kid who was told to leave.
Oh man.
I mean, he
he might have saved you some money.
He might have, yeah.
You know, they're almost taught not to. But yeah, it was nice of him.
Yeah, but it didn't feel good in the moment because you're just like,
sure. Oh. I've had the experience when I first started playing cards, and they go into like say Foxwoods for the first time, and then just like doing like just messing up position or going out of turn or not really paying attention. And everybody looks at you like, oh God, here's the new guy. Well, we know whose money we're taking today.
Well, and sometimes though you mess things up to where you're actually messing up their things too, especially in blackjack, where it's like they know a certain thing's coming and you do the wrong thing, so they miss that sequence.
Yeah.
And then everyone it's not friendly almost. And even like, I feel weird with the banter at the table. It's like kind of fake. And
sure.
I just get I remember we used to go to Montreal a lot when we were in our
teenage years. Gamble up there, right?
Yeah, you could just go there. You could be 18, I think.
That's cool.
So we would go up there. It was interesting, but I just, for some reason, I always felt intimidated by playing.
Play some slots. Sit down, like, you know what? Here's $50. I could afford to lose this.
Yeah.
And I'll just waste some time. But that's kind of what I did. I never play slots because you're the biggest sucker in the world. It's the biggest losing proposition to play a slot machine. I think I was winning a couple dollars on roulette. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to sit down and play some slots. And I start winning. And then next thing you know, like $70 is gone or $100 is gone. If you're intimidated, definitely don't do it.
What was like the disenchantment of being in Vegas, or did you get an opportunity at home?
I got a little homesick after a while. I wasn't really doing film anymore. It was just communicating with my partner via email over the phone, but I really wasn't there. I was sending some money back, for new equipment. But it got to the point where it's like, you know what? I have to be home now. I have to be back there. I'm not a part of it anymore.
Right.
And the love affair with Vegas just kind of ran dry. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to end up like everybody, like the rest of my friends out here who just moved out here and became miserable.
How many times do you go to the Strip after a while when you live there?
I went twice. I can actually remember. I lived there for about a year. I went twice.
And then you're sitting there going, why am I living here then? Right.
I was like, why am I in the Strip? The Strip, I just hated it.
Yeah.
Just, you realize there's things outside of the Strip to do that's cool.
Yeah.
But local stuff. But after a while, I was just like, yeah, my time in the desert's done.
Yeah. Well, the amazing thing with Vegas is it's like, especially when you fly in, you see where the people live. And then outside of that, there's just nothing.
It's cool. Again, you can get a nice home, a decent 3-bedroom home for $1,500 a month. But in a good area.
Yeah. But you got to work in.
Either you have a job already or
Yeah, or you're bringing money there. Jason Giambi was a big guy who lived out there.
Yes, he did live out there, and he used to own a lot of cars. Yeah, it was his thing. He owned, he was big into hot rods, and he had I don't think he lived too far from where I was staying, and I always dreamed to like bump into at a bar. It's like Jason, and I could figure him being like the coolest dude in the planet.
Yeah, it's so weird how he's still playing.
Yeah, I thought he was coaching, or is he kind of coaching playing?
Well, the weird part was like 2 years ago, I think he interviewed to be the manager of Colorado.
Wow.
And he lost, so he's played 2 more years. And he looks so old.
Yeah, he does. He has gray beard, right?
Yeah, he totally looks old. And he's like the old guy in college who's still at the party almost.
You know what's funny is you mentioned how old he looks. Remember the brawl that happened, I think it was last year, with the Dodgers and Arizona?
Mm-hmm.
And here comes Mark McGwire out of the dugout. And he looked bigger than every player that was still playing. I'm like, man, Mark McGwire is still a beast.
No, he's
not lost that steroid muscle or fat. I mean, he's still a big guy.
Yeah.
And when I saw Mark McGwire come out, and I think he went after Matt Williams, I'm like, he's gonna rip his head off. And then you could tell Matt Williams was nervous.
Yeah, because Matt Williams always looked old.
Yes, he did.
Even when he was young.
Did he win a ring?
I think he was on that.
He was on that
team that beat the Yankees, the 2001 team.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Because he used to play for the Giants too, right?
He did play for the Giants, yeah, way back in the day. I think he won with the Diamondbacks.
He did win yeah, I think you're right.
I think he was on that.
I always liked Matt Williams because he looks like the everyday player.
He hit like 50 homers one year, I think.
You know who was on the juice?
Yeah, well, that was it.
Remember the Brady Anderson year?
51 homers. And then I remember seeing the thing where he stood on the exercise ball and did a squat with like 225 pounds, standing on an exercise ball.
Christ.
I mean, that's like, what's the use at that point? The risk reward is so off on that. But we're at a point like where baseball, and I don't know if it's because the local teams are bad, but it's just not that intriguing.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, is I still love baseball. It's my childhood favorite sport, football, baseball. I've become more into hockey as I gotten older. I love hockey. I'm a diehard Ranger fan. I've gotten more into hockey, less into basketball because it's not the generation we grew up and the game's changed. I'm still very passionate about baseball. Yes, it could be a very boring, long game, but I'm still passionate, especially playoff time. I'm all for the Royals right now. I hope the Royals.
That's cool. Did they win?
Yeah, they're up 2 games from the ALCS. It's amazing.
For 1 game, right? Didn't they win? Or did they win 2 games?
They won 2.
Yet?
Yeah, they won 2.
It's a best of 5, right?
The the DS is or the AL divisional series is a 5 game.
I thought it was, unless the new playoff system is.
Yeah, I thought it was 7. You're right. It could be 5. If even better for them.
Kansas City Royals game 3 tomorrow. Yeah, they lead ALDS 2-0. And you know what? Maybe it was a year because that song by what's her name? The Royals song.
Yes. What the hell's her name?
We're gonna be Royals.
Lord.
Yeah. Like that was so weird when that came out.
It's about George Brett, right?
It's about a National Geographic article about George Brett or something, or a picture. Yeah. And this girl, like that, she is
like the uniform or something.
That's the truly globalized world right there.
Yeah.
She's from New Zealand, I think.
Yes.
A young girl sees an old thing of George Brett and writes a song that makes all this money, is like a #1 hit. Bruce Springsteen's doing covers of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the amazing thing.
I think there's an underlying theme to that story, to the song too. I think it's kind of a stab at Hollywood and.
Oh yeah, sure.
But yeah, just to see where it sprung from. That's pretty old George Brett.
Well, like everything, that's why we're talking about, we bring it back, where everything that you do in life informs the next thing you do.
Mm-hmm.
And every little thing that you assimilate or read, it kind of fills into this combination that like makes you who you are. Everything you do and every experience you have is different than the next person.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you combine the two, you know, they've always said with like John Lennon and Paul McCartney that they were never as good as the two of them together, but together they filled in the holes of each other and made an amazing thing that was better than the sum of the parts.
I see you have the John Lennon poster. Are you a Beatles fan? Are you big in the Beatles? Or
I do. I mean, in a way that anybody our age really could be. I mean, I never, like, my dad loved them when he was a kid.
My dad had a funny story. He actually met what's his name? George Harrison.
Really?
Yeah, in Jersey. 1979 or 78. My dad had a friend who was a producer, and he worked with the Beatles. He had a house, I think, in Paramus or Ridgewood.
Oh.
And he had George Harrison staying in his house. But he kind of like, he had a party one night and he kind of like kept to himself. He never was into drugs, and then I don't think he even smoked pot. And he kind of like did his own thing. And then my dad came over, and my dad had a Jaguar, and he was the only person in Bergen County to have a Jaguar. And I remember he introduced him to George. They said hello. They shook hands, and he's like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "This guy Phil, he's got a Jaguar." He's like, "Those are big in England, right?" And he's like, "Really?" And he looked out the window and he's like, "Oh my God, you have a Jaguar." And he went out and he like wanted to see my dad's Jaguar.
Oh my
and I always thought this was the biggest bullshit story of my life. I'm like, there's no way you had a Beetle look at your car. And he swears, he's like, I swear to God. He's like, I met George Harrison.
Oh my God. And
it's a funny story. And I tell everybody he's a diehard Beatle fan, and they're like, "You son of a bitch, I don't believe you." I'm like, "Yeah."
What'd your dad do?
We had a family business. We had a fence company, Belmont Fence Company.
Oh.
Based out of Garfield. My dad was the president of the company. His father, my grandfather, started it. So yeah, we had a family business back at the time.
So like white picket fences, all that kind of stuff?
Or? Yeah, industrial, everything. From home to business.
Isn't it amazing when you look back at like innovation and the things?
Yeah, my grandfather had a couple patents too. He patented a couple things back in the 50s.
So cool. And like you get in at the right time, making the right thing. Like we said with the wave, and you're making fences and
then you meet a Beetle.
The white picket fence ends up becoming the mark of upward mobility in the middle class.
Yeah, go figure.
It's unbelievable. But ALDS is 5 games.
It is 5 games. Good for the Royals. Just win one more, please.
Well, this is the part of sports I still love. I always say it, the magic. Mm-hmm. It's the magical essence of it that you can't write in the best script. That you can't.
I remember reading. We were talking about Eli Manning on Facebook. There was a chat, and you're like, "There's something about Eli when it comes to the playoffs that magic comes out."
Yeah,
so true. Like even with Derek Jeter, it's like, yeah, he's a Hall of Fame player. Absolutely, he's a 3,000 plus hitter. But when the playoffs came, that was Derek Jeter.
Well, and like somebody said with Derek Jeter, if you look at his numbers, they're almost the same in the regular season and the playoffs. But the same in the playoffs is unbelievably good.
Yes.
Like he hit 310 in the regular season, I think he hit 308 in the playoffs, and he basically played a full season.
Got 200 hits, right? For the
he played 158 games in the playoffs.
Sick.
Of the playoffs. A whole nother season.
That's insane. Some guys don't get to play one.
And I think he hit 20 homers because when the moment mattered, he would hit homers. That was the best part of him. I mean, people, I think, they got to the whole overrated thing.
Right.
And he was not over,
not at all.
Bill Simmons show. They always do like overrated, underrated, properly rated.
What does Bill Simmons think of him?
I think he, as a Red Sox fan, he jokingly needles, but I think you saw it with Jeter, and there's no one there right now. Maybe Trout could be it, but there's no one who's going to be Jeter because doing it in New York is just, it's different. And to stay there.
If Trout was a Yankee, he'd be the second coming of Mickey Mantle.
Oh, he absolutely.
And he reminds me of Mickey Mantle.
He really does.
I don't think he hits for power like Mickey.
He hit 35 homers this year, though.
Did he hit 35 this year? Okay. Mickey was a 40-plus guy, right?
Yeah.
Back in bigger ballparks, heavier balls.
Mickey was just an unbelievably special player.
It was him and I think Willie Mays were the two best.
Oh, I mean, he was an absurd player. And I think that Mickey Mantle might have had, wasn't it his knee?
Yeah, it was running for that fly ball that I think DiMaggio called him off. And
in the beginning of his career, basically. Because he was as fast, Mike Trout is so fast. He's a freak of nature. He hits. He's the five-tool garbage, which we always used to hear. And then when Mets fans heard that there was some player who had 5 tools and wasn't Alex Ochoa. It was some weird name. Unfortunately, when you're a Mets fan, you run into those things. But he was just, he was unbelievable.
He's the package, yeah.
And Jeter's got to be one of the most special things you've ever seen.
I want to get your take on this. What's your take on the Oberman bit? Do you think he did it just to get ratings or just to get?
Yeah, I think
I don't think he can actually believe. Like when he was comparing Yankee greats, he had Willie Randolph. You cannot compare Willie Randolph or even Thurman Munson to Derek Jeter. You can't do that. I thought that was insulting.
Well, even when you bring longevity into the matter, it kind of blows everything away.
Yeah.
Because Jeter, by the end of his career, everyone was like, "Oh, he's overrated. He does this on another team. It's not special." No, if he did it on another team, people would have noticed.
The guy's got 3,500 hits.
Yeah. People would have.
Is he 6th all time?
Yeah. He might have not been in so many playoffs.
Right.
And that is a big key because that made the magic that he is.
He's still a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Oh, he's first ballot, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, he ended up 260 homers.
How many?
Really good
1,100 RBIs, 1,200 RBIs,
something like that. But his runs were really good too.
Yeah.
And then he had one season where he showed to you, I can do whatever you want me to do.
Well,
he had like 24 homers.
When he hit 349, I think he got robbed from the MVP that year.
Yeah. No, he was just I mean, the last time we went to school together was when he started his career.
Yeah.
I always hit on that. It was 8th grade when he started his career. And the longevity is just.
His cousin used to work with my mom, and she actually lived in Paddington Square, where we lived, up on Earmont. And so back in the early 90s, she used to tell my mom, "Oh, my cousin's going to make it," or he's in the minors right now. He just got the Yankees sent him back down. He's so upset.
Yeah.
So like this young guy, I'm just like, Derek who? As a kid, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'll look out for Jeter. And now Derek Jeter is Michael Jordan of baseball in a sense, name wise.
No, he's unbelievable. Now, the weird part was that he ended and then he started this new website, the Players Tribune. And it was like, he had this whole thing about how all of these reporters had basically not said what he meant about things. And that's why he was so guarded. Like, I feel like that's overdoing it. Yeah.
Oh.
And that's why he was like, I was very guarded because I didn't want what I had to say to be misconstrued or whatever. But now he's doing it because his new venture is called the Players Tribune, which is this place where players can say things to the world in an unfiltered way.
Kidding.
And someone was like, well, isn't that Twitter? But I sort of don't like that aspect of it. So far, it's been Jeter did the first post, and then he had Russell Wilson do the second one.
That's about like I used to be a bully.
Yeah, the bully thing. Now, my thing with it is I think that he should do podcasting.
Doesn't Aaron Rodgers do a podcast?
Oh, does he? I didn't know that.
I thought he does.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. But imagine if
That would be cool if Derek Jeter did a podcast.
Imagine like if he
Imagine
did,
who he can get and guest he wants.
Exactly. Imagine,
or if it's just him. It's just him talking to you.
Yeah. Well, I think with the guest part, I mean, here's the problem with the site. It's still just Russell Wilson. So they haven't gotten a second one. Like when you make a new site, and I think they got someone who was one of the founders of ESPN, the magazine, to be the editor-in-chief of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you think because of how things went in your career and how magic it was that maybe it'll just write itself and do itself. But he needs to be so invested in this. And I think he could succeed in such a ridiculous way. Like if he were doing a podcast and he were hosting and he could get Michael Jordan on,
right?
We talked about the eavesdropping, might have maybe on mic, maybe off, but podcasting is like eavesdropping. Video podcasting is like looking in the window with the woman, Back to the Future.
Yeah.
People love it. Can you imagine?
You get to see a side of Derek Jeter you never saw.
Oh, and you hear him go back and forth.
Gold one line. I bet he's gold.
Yeah, and you hear him go back
I do. It's a touchback, stroll back memory lane.
Is there any about Barrier Brewing before you go to Mohawk House and tell them about
it? We are the best brewery in New York. Yes, I do feel that way. No, we actually make 65 different beers. We're actually pushing 70. We don't do any we don't have a flagship. We don't do any seasonals. I think the most seasonal beer we do is a butternut squash. We don't even believe in like pumpkin ales.
That was real. The butternut squash you said was real.
It's called Saz Squatch.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
We just made our first Marzen, which a Marzen is an Oktoberfest. We just made our first one of that. So we're starting to dabble into some seasonals. The beers you got there, one is a chili, amber chili, basically like a hoppy chili, amber chili beer. We use red and green Thai-bird chilies, and that was brewed by one of the owners.
Good with Mexican food?
Excellent. Great with Thai food too. We actually make a Thai beer for a Thai restaurant in the city called Uncle Boone's.
Oh, cool.
Excellent Thai restaurant. If you ever like Thai, go there.
Do you like go to eat at all the places where you had the beer put?
I try. It's part of my job is to go back and support the businesses who support us.
And then the stout?
Stout is called Morticia. It's a imperial stout, Russian imperial stout, bottled edition with maple syrup. And that is my personal favorite, and it just gets better with a little bit of age.
And then the hidden,
and then the no label is it's a beer called Archibald, which is a barley wine, so it's a little higher gravity, about 10.5%, 11%.
Yeah, barley wine is crazy.
It's a sipper. It's a sipper.
Yeah, barley wine is like, I still have to find. We'll see. I'll drink it. I still. It's so in between like beer and wine, obviously, that you're like, oh no, they're so sweet usually.
They're love and hate. I think ours is starting to mellow out a little bit. The younger the fresher they are, the stronger they are. Yeah. So we say the term hot, so like alcohol hot. So there might be some heat to it, but with a little time, that beer is going to mellow out nice.
That's awesome. So I should let it rest a little
backbone. More. Yeah, I would
put these in the fridge or not put them in the fridge.
Yeah, I would keep them cool. The big beers you can keep cool. Cool. They don't have to be frozen. 32 degrees. You can keep them. If you have a part in the basement or whatever, a closet or whatever, you could put them in.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to try them out. So
definitely got to have you come out to the brewery though sometime.
Oh, I'll be out there, and so it's been cool having Mike here. We're pumped. We'll do it again, and everyone just keep listening. Appreciate it, and reviewing, which is very important. It's a shock, but Apple. Part of the algorithm of what makes the podcast show up in the featured and the new and noteworthy, because the Apple really does have a good app, free app, and they do a good job almost with an iTunes-like interface. The way when you go to iTunes, you see all the songs, or if you're looking at TV, you see all the shows and the most, the newest ones and the most downloaded ones. The podcast has a very similar one, so they do a good job with that. But what decides that is not only the amount of listens, which I appreciate. Everyone's been doing a good job with that. But if you review it, hopefully with a good one, like a 4 or 5 star, if you review it, it helps the episodes in whatever the algorithm it's feeding into. It helps them rise up into those places. They like seeing people actually reviewing it.
Pretty cool.
So appreciate that from everyone. And then also, if you go to the site, MatthewMcQueenie.com, any Amazon purchases you make, if you use the link on my site, I would appreciate it, because I get a 4% cut of anything you buy, but it comes out of Amazon, not out of your take. So It's a cool little thing they do. And I also shared a Amazon. You'll be in the market for a new phone soon, I think. Amazon. Have you ever seen these sites like Gazelle or Cash for iPhone?
Yes.
Where you can go. They send you a self-addressed thing, and you can put your iPhone in, and they give you a check.
Yeah. Well,
I think it's like for the iPhone 5S, 16 gig. Those sites are giving you like $225. Amazon has a buyback program where you could trade it into Amazon. It's not for cash; it's for Amazon credit. But they'll give you almost $100 more than any of those other sites. But we buy everything on Amazon anyway.
So you can just buy an iPhone 6 just with that.
So you use your Amazon credit, but you get way more credit back in that. You get $100 more. So I put a link to that. And lastly, you wrote something called The Wire, but you must have loved the Wire itself.
It's funny. I never got into The Wire, ironically.
Oh, wow.
And my partner Doug, who I'll keep this very, very short. He came up. This is actually the Wire was his idea, or Wire was his idea. He came up with it while sitting on interim stall at work one day. he was either into The Wire that much either, but I've been recommended and I'm going to watch it. I heard the show is incredible.
It's an unbelievable show. And I don't know if you know, are you Amazon Prime member?
No.
So Amazon Prime.
I will be after today.
Yeah, Amazon Prime's awesome. It gives you 2-day free shipping on all Prime eligible, which is the most stuff. I got all this equipment through the majority of this equipment through Amazon, and on the Prime you get the 2-day.
Sweet.
It gives you one Kindle book a month, out of an approved amount. Like it's not any book, but it gives you one a month, and then it has their own Netflix-like system called Amazon Instant Video.
Okay.
And they actually have like exclusive shows that Netflix doesn't, like Justified, which a lot of people like. I have to start watching that. I haven't yet, but they have that show there. They don't have it on Netflix. They have The Good Wife on there. They don't have The Good Wife on Netflix. They had Under the Dome, which was a show people liked, the Stephen King book, and turned into a TV show. It had Hank from what am I thinking of? Breaking Bad.
Okay.
was in it. So they have a lot of shows, and they did that show while the actual show was on. So
cool.
Amazon actually had it pretty much right behind it. But Amazon has all of HBO's back catalog. So not
nice.
like not the most recent stuff.
Right.
But you don't need HBO Go. So you can watch it all on there, and it has like, the whole Wire. It has the whole Sopranos, all the old shows, and it has older seasons of current shows.
Cool.
So it's like the first time HBO has given you an option to watch them, not through HBO Go or through HBO itself. So Prime's really cool. That's where you can watch The Wire. That's on the site too. So if you click those things, I get a modest amount, dollars per thing. It helps with the podcast hosting.
Cool.
So, so Mike, it's been cool. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me, man. We got to do it again.
Yes.